Good evening, everybody. I'm Stu Hardy, the chair of the Tiverton Planning Board, and welcome very much to our December 5, 2023 regular monthly meeting. I'd like to begin our meeting, as always, with a roll call. Rosemary Eva.
Here.
V.A. Lopes.
Here.
Peter Bramanti. I don't see Peter. Janice Gomes.
Here.
Christopher Shriver.
Here.
Patricia Hilton.
Present.
William Gerlach.
Present.
Dick Taylor.
Here.
And I'm here. So we have a quorum. I do not see Rick Rogers, but we are expecting him later on in the meeting, our DPW director. Nathan, the town's consulting civil engineer, is not able to be with us tonight. He has a family tragedy. But he was not prepared to offer any information. In any case, there's nothing on the agenda really that requires Nathan's presence. So Nathan Michael will not be with us. Sitting directly to my left is Todd Romano, our legal counsel, and to Todd's left, Ashley Sweet, our interim planner AO, and I saw Ed Rotello, who you all know is the land use clerk, is here, and I don't see anybody else that I need to introduce. I'd like to begin the meeting tonight by welcoming a new member, V.A. Lopes. V.A. is our newest member. She's a healthcare strategist, which is a new profession, I believe, in the healthcare industry. She lives on Deer Run Road. V.A. spent her childhood in this area, I believe Westport more than Tiverton. But she went to high school in New Jersey and then on to college in Pennsylvania, Penn State University. She moved back to Tiverton in 2022 and coaches youth soccer as well as being a player in an adult soccer league. So I'd like to welcome VA to the planning board. I have two very brief announcements. The president of the town council called me today and asked me to let everybody on the planning board and the audience know that next week the town council will be hearing a request to advertise for a new position in the planning department, and that position, the title of that person will be assistant town planner. So I was asked to make that announcement, and I'd like to also announce that everybody should speak into the mics, because I've been told that listening to recent YouTube recordings, sometimes we think we're loud enough, but it's not being picked up by the camera. So please be sure to speak slowly and clearly and loudly into your mic. So I'd like to now go to the first item on our agenda, which is Deduca Real Estate LLC, 50 Stafford Road. Mr. Philip Deduca is here with us, along with attorney Michael Monti. And they both came before the planning board almost a year ago. It was November 15 of 2022. They had a concept plan for a retail office of about 3,500 square feet with storage in a contractor bay area. The proposal was very well received by the planning board because it's actually an improvement over existing conditions at that site. As you probably know, we're talking about very north end of Stafford Road near the Fall River border, just north of the the casino traffic circle. And it's the lot that now hosts the scooter shop. So this proposal the applicant has to come back and present a somewhat similar proposal that now involves a two-lot subdivision. And I believe the lot is about 1.2, 1.3 acres.
I believe it's 55,000 square feet and change.
Okay, so it's just a tad more than an acre. And so you have plenty of land there to do a two-lot subdivision in that particular zone, which I believe is R30. I may be wrong about that. So I will invite either Mr. DeDuca or legal counsel Michael Monti to tell us what you plan now.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Michael Monti on behalf of the applicant. A very accurate summation of the travel of this. We were here about a year ago for concept review for the exact project that the chairman described. This proposal for further concept review is essentially identical to that prior application, with the exception that the applicant is proposing to divide the lot into two, so there would be a northern and southern lot. The reason for this relates to financing. Mr. DeDuca went to Bank Newport, and the logistics of doing this as one lot with three structures created certain complications with the bank. So we're here tonight to present this plan before you and to elicit feedback on the location, principally, of that lot line. The engineering team at Principe Engineering and Josh Morrows, who is here, designed this plan in a way that tried to create the least relief that would be necessary from the zoning ordinance. It's an odd-shaped lot, as you can see on the plans before you. The proposed structure, which is commercial, office, and retail proposed uses on the southern lot, would require some relief from zoning under this plan, and so the intent was to draw the lot line in a way that made that relief the least necessary. Happy to answer any questions relative to the proposed drainage basin that you can see on the north lot. That would be shared by the two lots. We could do an easement for drainage, and there would be access, mutual access between the two lots. So would love to get your feedback as we look to preparing a plan to submit in January, which I understand would be under, I believe, Unified Development Plan Review and be solely before the Planning Board.
So are you talking about development plan review, Article 20 in our zoning ordinance, or are you talking about?
The new regulations that go in effect January 1st, I think, there's so many of them, but I think that they would allow for the entirety of this application, including the zoning relief, to be heard by the board.
Yeah.
So we have this plan before you, and we want to be very transparent in terms of, this plan would require some relief from zoning due to where the lot line is drawn, but we think principally this is due to the sort of odd-shaped lot.
Right, it's an L-shaped lot.
Yes, an L.
So I'd like to ask Ashley to make any comments in terms of her response or reaction to this application. You're not even, this is more almost a concept, this is a concept plan review, so you're looking for some feedback from us.
Yes, we're happy to redraw the proposed lot line if it's preferred by planning. I think it's this balance of we can draw the lot line in a way that might be better from a planning perspective, but then that might require more zoning relief. But because this whole board is going to hear both issues, I think this is a perfect forum and time to have that discussion.
Right. Ashley, do you have any reaction to where the lot lines are now being proposed?
I mean, I think Mr. Montes made the point that we, if we move this in the direction of making more, more appealing lots from a planning perspective, that might end up with more zoning relief. So it's really gonna be a discussion for the board, in terms of how comfortable we feel with zoning relief. And Mr. Monti is correct that if this application's filed after January 1, the planning board would be the one granting the dimensional relief necessary. It looks like, and it's hard to tell on this site plan, but the building that would be proposed in that lower portion of the L shape, does that fit within the setback?
So as currently drawn on the plan before you, this would, and Josh, please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the only setback relief this would require would be from that proposed rear lot line.
To the kidney center.
Yes.
Kidney center.
So the minimum rear setback is 50 feet, I believe here, and that would be 25.7 feet from the rear lot line. So the plan here, that would be the only dimensional relief required under this plan.
With the subdivision line
With
drawn
the
and
subdivision.
shown.
Now, if we draw the subdivision line in a way that is perhaps more natural, cutting it across so that you have straight
as opposed
across,
to the jog.
then we're looking at both rear setback and side setback relief.
We add lot area. You would need lot area variance.
And we would, please, Josh.
Yeah, lot area would be a third variance required for
If you
that.
drew the line straight across.
Correct, yes. So we'd introduce 2 more variances on top of, instead of this concept.
But actually, would the planning board then be authorized, we're talking about after the the legislation goes into effect, January 1, would the zoning board then have the ability to grant that zoning relief?
The planning board would grant the
planning
zoning
board.
relief under unified development review
Right,
because
right,
you
right.
would be, they would be before the board for the subdivision, and they would be creating a lot that doesn't conform to the dimensional requirements in terms of, well, the building itself won't conform.
Right, so there would be,
So-
exactly right.
So my question to you is, do you intend to do this? Because you're creating 2 conforming lots, right? So that's one piece of this, that's a subdivision.
Mhm.
The second piece of this is you're asking to develop those 2 lots with 2 separate buildings. One of those buildings is not gonna meet the dimensional setbacks, it's gonna be outside of the building envelope, so that's a separate issue. So I guess my question, and that's where the dimensional relief would come in for unified development review, not on the subdivision piece of it, that's one action of the board. The second action of the board is development review, which would trigger the unified development review for the variance. So we're really dealing with 2 things here because the first application we saw did not include a subdivision.
Correct.
It was just development of the lot. This is a 2-piece here where you're gonna do a subdivision that conforms and then you're gonna propose development that would need dimensional relief.
Right.
Correct, yeah, and to the extent, we want to present the application where it shows everything we're
Sure.
asking for at once, whatever process that is. And at my understanding of the new regs would be that it would stay with the planning board.
It would.
So I think on an application like this, that's probably one of the benefits of the new law is that, one set of eyes
Right,
can
right,
look at this. And we're really happy to draw that lot line in whichever way, the the administrative staff and the planning board advise?
I would say that, and this is just my own opinion, that even though a more conventional lot would require more relief, since the zoning board is granting, since the planning board rather than the zoning board is granting the relief, I think I would rather go with a more conventional lot. Because I think that would benefit the owner if you ever wish to sell a lot, one of the two lots. An odd-shaped lot might not be as attractive on the property market. And also, I think it's our general approach here on the planning board to encourage conventional lots and to stay away from bizarrely designed, oddly shaped lots, whether we're talking residential or commercial. That's just my own personal feeling, and my colleagues may disagree. But at the end of the day, it's your decision, not ours. And whatever you decide based on, what you want to do now and what you may want to do in 10 years' time with the property, it's really your call to make, and we'll work with you. Whatever call you make, we'll work with you. I think we'd like to see that area developed in an attractive way as you're proposing. Does anybody have any questions or any comments?
I do have a comment. And I would like to say I was much in favor of the last time you came as a concept and then saw this application. And it's a very tough area up there as far as circulation, traffic circulation and safety. And I'm very conscious of safety because sometimes I use that rotary and it's close there. Now, and I felt with Mr. DeLuca having control of the whole lot, he could have some ease of ingress and egress. But I would like to make sure that the traffic and the parking, because it's a very tough area.
Thank you.
Well, I can answer that. It's part of the reason for this subdivision is, of course, financing, so we can get the project developed, but also by us doing the, planning on the building now while we are doing it, and so that way there, it's gonna be open access and for safety and traffic and parking and all the things, and the look of the buildings and the concept of it. And that's why we listened to what you were saying last time about, and I felt that if we kept it, wide open, it becomes something that could, you could put a big, huge building in there, because now the setbacks and whatnot, when you're using the whole piece of property, so.
You had mentioned a restaurant the last time, I believe.
Yes, I did.
You were here.
And that's what we plan on doing. So, so it'll, I feel the whole project works well together. As far as whether you draw the line this way, that way, whatever, it's, we're trying to make the least amount of obstacles or ask for requirements or whatever. And we do live in New England, and there's a lot of crooked lots here. It's not like Vegas where everything is squares and whatnot, so,
And thank you. We appreciate the concern of traffic and parking and circulation. Mr. DeDuca is not a land developer. He's a business owner. And this is going to be a challenging process to go through. But when we come back before you, we'll certainly be prepared to speak in greater detail about these issues.
But it's 2 lots rather than 1.
It will be 2 lots, correct.
Right.
May I say one thing?
Yes.
I foresee future adverse possession claims with that little jog.
Yes, so I think based at least on the feedback of the chairman, it sounds like our application is likely to be a more standard lot line with more zoning relief, so that will likely go away as well. And
That's a
good-
reason to make it go away.
It is a good point. Yeah, those are not fun.
No.
Anybody else have questions or any feedback? It really is, though, you've heard my personal view, but it really is up to Mr. DeDuca to decide how he wants to draw those lines. And however that's done, we'll try to work with you on this attractive project. Bill?
I'll pass.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Well, we look forward to having you back, and
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. So the next item on our agenda is Mr. Andrew Ditton. And I saw Mr. Ditton earlier. I don't think I saw Don Maderas.
May I ask, Mr. Chairman, if you could slide us back on the agenda?
Yes, we can.
We're waiting for Don.
You're waiting for Don. Okay, that's fine. I will need a motion to take our agenda out of order and to switch agenda item number 2 with agenda item number 3, and then we'll make another motion if we have to.
So moved.
But Don lives in Little Compton, so that's almost a different country.
Thank you.
So Chris has made a motion and Rosemary is seconding. Okay, any discussion on this? Hearing none, all of those in favor of moving the agenda? Okay, so now we will hear agenda item number 3, which is so this is a request by the applicant of the Sousa Road project that is now called Vital at Tiverton Commons. It's a large residential comprehensive permit project. And the applicant has asked for waivers, not actually waivers, but really more delay in submitting checklist items for the master plan application. So all of our applications have a checklist that requests specific types of information in writing. And in order to be certified as complete applications, they need to get almost all of that information in, at least the great lion's share of the information in. And the applicant is requesting that some of this information be delayed. I believe that there are 26 specific items on the master plan checklist that the applicant wishes to delay. Sue Mara is in the audience. Hello, Sue. Sorry for not saying hello to you earlier. I didn't recognize you. You've been with us once, but so Sue Mara is actually handling this application for the planning board as the interim temporary AO, administrative officer to the planning board. So Sue was good enough to go through the request that the applicant has made and has provided us, and you all have copies of sort of a spreadsheet that provides not only the applicant's request and what it's all about, but also Sue's response and what her recommendation would be to the planning board. And I'd like to thank you for doing that. It's really very, very good. And your formatting makes it very easy to read and go through. You've all seen this. So I would like to remind everybody that that the checklist is legally binding. It is established as part of our subdivision regulations, the subdivision regulations of the planning board and the planning department. And I would like to not get into a debate or a discussion or a negotiation between the applicant and the planning board, because it's really up to the planning board to decide what information you need up front as part of the master plan application, what information can be delayed until later in the master plan discussion, and what information can be passed all the way back to preliminary or even final plan stage of deliberation. It's really up to us as the planning board to decide what types of information we need to be comfortable about making an informed, intelligent determination when we approve the master plan, the preliminary plan, the final plan. So I would just say that I would like to spend some time discussing each one of these items briefly, and I will begin by inviting Mr. John Mancini, who is the attorney for the applicant, to provide any new information or any changes that you would like to make in your original request to the planning board at this time. And then I would like to call on Sue Mara to kind of walk us through, very briefly walk us through her recommendations on the 25 or 26 items. Mr. Mancini?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr.
And I'd like to also say that we have a very, very long agenda tonight, so I'm asking everybody to be as brief and concise as possible.
That's going to be very difficult for me. I get paid by the hour and the word, so I'm going to be here quite a while. But I'll do my best. I'll do my best out of
plenty of
courtesy.
experience with lawyers.
I'll do my best out of courtesy to the chairman, of course. For the record, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John Mancini, I represent the applicant and the owner with respect to the proposal before you. And before we go into the specifics, I just want to give the board a little bit of background with respect to what we're doing here and why we're here. We filed a comprehensive permit pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4553-4 as it currently stands. As the board's well aware and has already had discussions, the State Zoning Enabling Act, the state subdivision regulations, and the state's comprehensive permit process and procedures and statute is all changing. It's going to be newly in effect on January 1, which will also affect this project and will affect the approval process for what we're doing. We have submitted a master plan, as I said, under the current statute. Come January, the new statute doesn't even provide for or call for a master plan review. It allows an applicant to go right to preliminary plan. The current statute does obligate an applicant who files an application for master plan to follow the checklist that's promulgated pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4523-40, which is your master plan checklist. And as Mr. Hardy indicated, the master plan checklist is part of your subdivision regulations, and it's promulgated for us to review. In addition to that, your zoning code also provides for Article 28, Section 5, which is an additional checklist specific to comprehensive permits. The applicant has presented its plans, which outline the site It has also presented a project narrative which identifies the scope. It has presented a list of waivers by way of a separate document and a summary of what waivers it sought, and then it also provided a memorandum in support of its waivers. I think it's very important to note, as the chairman indicated, and I'm glad you made that statement, we're not asking for these waivers as waivers that they be essentially eliminated, that these requirements or these provisions be eliminated. What we're asking is that they be delayed, and we've identified reasons for why they need to be delayed, many of which surround the fact that to accomplish the language of the checklist, it will require some extensive engineering and work that is not necessarily prepared at this stage of review. As you are very much aware, under Rhode Island General Laws, 452330, the
Yes,
definitions.
we don't need the specific
Yeah, well, I have a stenographer,
citation.
so I do. I apologize, but I need to make a record. I know you have a long agenda, but I need to create a record. And going back to my point, the Rhode Island General Laws identifies a master plan, and identifies a master plan as a conceptual plan, and specifically says under 452340 that the master plan, which is conceptual, does not require extensive engineering. And so what we have presented is a master plan which outlines the concept of what is being developed that we believe can be properly tested at preliminary once the final engineering is done. And with that, we have requested specific waivers so that we can move the project along, obtain the information that we need. It is a large project. It encompasses over 60 acres. It is a combination of residential and commercial. Only 7 units to be in commercial capacity, 230 units to be residential. 25% of those units will be affordable and will meet the comprehensive permit statute for affordability. Who I have with me this evening is Molly Titus from DePreet Engineering, who's our project engineer. She has specifically gone through the checklist. She's identified the waivers, and much of the information that's requested in the waivers is submitted. And I want to end with what you've requested at the beginning, which is what additional information that we have. So in reviewing your staff's recommendation, which we very much appreciate because it was extremely helpful, and comparing that to our specific request, I don't believe we're far apart. I think the issue really surrounds, or the crux of the question is, what particularity, what specificity is the board looking for with regards to information? We have, I think, all of the items that we've asked for a waiver. We've gotten additional information since the time that we submitted the application only a few weeks ago, back on November 27th. And a lot of the questions we're going to have, either of the board or of your administrative officer, is what level of specificity are you asking it to be delivered? Are you looking for the engineering, or are you just looking for information? For example, with respect to utilities, are you looking for confirmation that the site has utilities, including water or sewer, or are you looking for the engineering as to where the exact lateral will be and what the diameter of that lateral will be, either for sewer or water? We can answer the former, but the latter will take additional engineering work that we're not prepared to do at this stage, nor should we be prepared to do at this stage. So with that, if the chairman wants to hear from Ms. Mara, I think that's acceptable. What I'd like to do is just go through the individual waivers, hear the staff recommendation, and ask the board to hear our response to that and the information that we have, that we've provided, and new information that we can provide to you now, and go one by one. There's actually not many of them. I think we can move very, very quickly, but it's important for us to do it orderly so that the record is very clear on what we're trying to accomplish.
We do understand that the heavy-duty engineering is done at preliminary plan stage, not master plan stage, and we always make an effort to help applicants save money by not being required to do heavy-duty engineering that is very expensive before they really need to, and before they know that their project has gotten at least a master plan clearance. But having said that, and I believe Sumara understands that very well based on what she has provided us. Sue, why don't you come up and stand at the podium and speak into the mic? And Sue is with the firm it's the same firm that actually is with Weston and Sampson. So if you could just run us through briefly, because everybody has already read this, giving us a little bit of your rationale.
Sure. I'm wondering whether you want me to go one by one.
I'd rather that we didn't go one by
Okay.
one. It's going to take a long time to go
It
one
will.
by one. Let's tell us how you approached this.
Sure. My name is Susan Mara. I'm a project manager with Weston and Sampson. I am AICP certified. I've been a planner for about 20 years, mostly in Rhode Island. So I did the staff review for the original application and wasn't unable to certify it as complete because there were waivers requested, and the only people who can grant the waivers to the checklist is the planning board. And so there's the list of them, and what I did is go through them. And just in general, the approach that I took was, is this information necessary for this board to make a decision at this point in terms of the master plan under the current regulations? Obviously, you try to be as flexible as possible, but, I've been doing this for a long time, and if you are too flexible at the beginning, again, I'm not saying that this is going to happen here, but there's a reason that the law is set up like this, where you try to identify your fatal flaws at the beginning. Anyway, so, where we could, recommend some flexibility, and we just talked about utilities, and I think, what we had actually recommended on the utilities is not even for a plan, but just some information from the engineer on the overall approach. I think the attorney was talking about, yes, the presence of utilities that could serve the site is important, and maybe some information about what the approach will be. Thinking, again, for the board, and is this enough information for you to be able to, say, okay, yes, this looks like it is a feasible project. As far as the additional waivers for, I think, the comprehensive permit, I think we recommended granting all of those except for, the first one, because that's just basically a list of relief that will be ultimately requested. And, I didn't think it was, we didn't think it's unreasonable at this point to, to be able to have that list.
Thank you. And if anybody has any questions for Sue with respect to what she put together, her recommendations, now is a good time to ask Sue. If not, I think I would like everybody around the table here, all board members, to think about any changes that they would like to make, either additions or subtractions from what Sue has presented. I personally think that Sue has given us a very good response. I do have some suggestions myself, but would you like me to start with my suggestions, and then we can have a discussion, and then we can bring the applicant back in when the applicant has a better understanding of where the board is coming from. You've already seen Sue's.
Why don't you just give us a vote up and down? It'll make the process a lot easier, because apparently you don't want to hear what we have to say and why we've requested the waivers.
No. I just said a minute ago that I will be bringing you back into the discussion.
Tonight or at another hearing?
No, tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tonight. And certainly the board members may have some questions that they would like to ask you. But I think as a
Doesn't
process.
it make more sense to hear what our waivers are and the reason for our
We know,
waivers?
we have had this information, we know what
Okay.
you're requesting.
Okay.
We have it in writing, and we have the response, so we don't have to hear that all over
And
again.
do you have what our requested relief is? Because I heard
Yes.
that you're.
Yes.
that-
Yes.
She's saying she doesn't have our application
we-
requested relief.
We have 2 large documents
Okay,
from
good.
your office,
Okay.
sir, which were distributed to the planning board 10 days ago. And more recently, we have Sue Mara's recommendation, so we've been through
Okay,
this.
it's your meeting, you then go ahead.
Mr. Chairman? Before we go a little bit further, I'm wondering if we could hear from the solicitor. You know, it's not usual that an applicant brings a stenographer to a planning board meeting, which, in my limited experience and my time as a former counselor, warns me that there is the real possibility that this is preparing a case for potential litigation down the road. So I feel a lot less comfortable going forward without our solicitor's advice as to how we should handle this application, because frankly, whether it was intended or not, bringing a solicitor, bringing a stenographer to a master plan review hearing feels a little bit adversarial, and I'd like to hear our solicitor's guidance on going forward.
So first of all, any applicant can bring a stenographer to any public hearing that they want to.
I understand, it's
Right.
just not very
And all we're doing tonight are talking about waiving checklist items, not even what I'll call dimensional waivers or zoning waivers. And John, I think what Sue was referring to is she wasn't clear as to what zoning relief waivers you were requesting. I may be totally wrong on that, I'm not sure, but.
No, that's right. It's just that he requested a waiver, or the applicant requested a waiver for, let's see, Article 21, Section 5, application requirements, Section 5A1, complete an application form as provided by the administrative officer, which includes specific identification of all relief requested from the provisions of the town zoning ordinance and/or town land development and subdivision regulations, and they requested a waiver of that.
And the reason we did that is because it was duplicative. We've already requested it in the application that we submitted for the project. So if you look at
Okay.
page 5 of our summary, you'll say, it says relief requested, and it identifies the use variance, the dimensional variance, rationale for it, and then it goes into waivers requested. So if there's a particular form that you want, that's not a problem, we'll fill out the form.
I think that's what, I think
that's
that's what that
easy.
one comes down to. All right.
That's easy.
Now, the board wants to discuss which checklist items should be waived. Did I understand you correctly? Have you or can you comply with some of,
Yeah.
so we can take some of these off the table right now?
Yep. We can take many of them off the table. Again, it depends on what exactly, the language of the checklist is not clear. So there's some questions as to how specific you're asking for the information to be.
Okay.
We
If
can
it's
provide
general
that information to
information.
you tonight.
Yeah, if it's general information, we have it. If you want a letter from the Water Authority, we have it. If you want a letter from Historic Conservation Commission Heritage, we have it. But we don't have, let me give you another
We heard
example.
you. So, and I don't mean to cut you off
Yeah,
by
no,
any
no,
means. No, no. I want to get right down to it, though.
Yeah.
My
So do I.
recommendation to the board is you go through Sue's list, that Excel table that she gave you, discuss item by item. If you have questions for the applicant, go ahead and do it.
Okay, so item by item.
I think that's going to be the quickest and easiest way. And John, once we get to item, if you can already comply with that, let's get it right out in the open.
I agree. I think that's the quickest way to do it, and it gives the applicant a fair hearing. You're here to hear
We're going to give you
from us.
We're going to give you the hair fair,
Yeah,
John.
you're here to hear from us as to
Okay.
why we think this waiver either should be waived or delayed to the next stage of review.
Yep. So Sue, will you be more comfortable if you sit at the
I think so, yeah.
podium? So why don't we get you over there so we can get through this?
So I'll begin then, and what we're doing is we're going through this item by item at our legal counsel's suggestion. So the first item is checklist item number 18, which is density calculations based on the exclusion of unsuitable land from the total land area. Sue has recommended that this request should not be granted. The applicant was suggesting that it be provided at the final plan stage of review. Typically, these days, we don't even have a final plan stage of review. We tend to approve the preliminary plan and then give the AO the authority to approve the final plan with suitable conditions. But that's, so does anybody disagree with Sue Mara's recommendation that this checklist item 18 not be granted?
So if I can respond to that, our request for that waiver was because of the language.
We're actually.
Well, I'm
we would
going to
like
say, I have that. It's on page 3. It's on section 3. We've identified the density calculations based on verified wetlands and non-verified wetlands.
That's all we need.
It's on there. The reason why we asked for the waiver is the language that you have in your checklist item seems like it's finite language. So there's some so right now, all we can provide to you is an estimate based on the fact that we do not have verified wetlands. So we don't know whether you want it verified or unverified. So what we've provided is verified.
The recommendation is that, yeah, what we said here is give us what you have now and it can be refined at preliminary plan.
It's on sheet 3.
Okay.
So sheet 3 provides 2 calculations. One that we say that it, without historic district, and one without unverified wetlands. And really, that's kind of where the rub is coming on some of these. So we're not saying we don't have it. We're just saying to you that your checklist item is very finite, and maybe maybe we're playing on words, but we want to be very careful that we're not treading on something that is not properly done.
So we would request you to provide what information you have now at the master plan stage of review, and certainly all of the information as part of your preliminary plan application. So
Can I say something too?
Yes.
When the waiver was requested, I just responded to that request for the waiver. I didn't go back and try and find if it wasn't being provided somewhere else in the package. But so if it is, that might be, good information to have.
Well, the waiver request also indicated why it was being requested, and it indicated in the summary the fact that maybe it was just too much paper all at once, because it did then cross-reference the memo, which cross-referenced the plans. So you kind of had to jump around a little bit, so I get it. But I can withdraw that waiver.
Perfect.
I can withdraw that waiver,
So now we're on.
based on the chairman's comments.
So now we're going on to number 23.
Hold on, Stu. I just want to make, he has a stenographer, so we're going to make sure everything's clear.
Yeah.
John, you've withdrawn the waiver for checklist number 18, is that correct?
Correct. So item number 18, which is density calculation, is withdrawn based on the fact that on page 3 of the plans indicates, sheet 3 of the plans indicates the density calculations.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Trish.
I just wanted to see if we had the plan here, which I do, because I want to see.
Perfect.
Here's the plan.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, all I received were the certificate of completeness, 2 sheets here, a memorandum and a narrative, no plans, and just the Excel worksheet. You have a plan that distributed?
The plan would not have been distributed to the board because this certification of completeness has not been granted yet.
Okay, and we don't have the original checklist.
So while Patricia's doing that, I'd like to go on to the next item, which is checklist item number 23, and this is the location and dimension of all existing utilities. You mentioned a minute ago that you do have information to share with us on all existing utilities, which would be water, sewer, electric, gas, stormwater, et cetera. And Sue agrees with you and says that, yes, these items can be delayed until later in the master plan review. We would want to have them before we vote on the master plan. We need to know where the utilities are, and in particular, we're concerned about water. So if you are agreeable to that, then I can go on to the next item
we
on
are.
the checklist, which is number 24, the location of any unique and/or historic features. And again, Sue has recommended that, yes, this is reasonable. I would like to point out that all of that information is readily available on the website of the state's Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission. If you will look under the Osborne-Bennett Historic District in the town of Tiverton, you'll see all of that information. But it's really, we shouldn't have to go after that information. It's really up to the applicant to provide that. But if you would please do that at your convenience before we wrap up master plan deliberation. Master plan review is going to go on for a while, so you'll have adequate time, I believe. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Mr. Mancini?
I do. On that item, that is also on the plan. That has been identified on the plan. The issue we have is it has not been confirmed. So that could be a moving target, and based on that.
That can be a moving target, and we'll get it confirmed before we wrap up master plan deliberation.
Correct.
So that brings us to the next item, which is item number
Excuse
20.
me. Yeah, I'm sorry, just so we're clear, so item number 24 now will be, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I need to make sure your record is clear here, for you and for Mr. Mancini. Now,
Okay,
number
it's
24
right here.
is going to be provided, the board agrees, prior to master plan approval? Is that my understanding?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
That's fine with the applicant.
It's on the plan set.
It's on the plan set now, but it hasn't been verified, so.
Perfect.
So that brings us to number 25, checklist item number 25, which is a narrative statement regarding the potential impact of the proposed development on the neighborhood and on the town. I would say that Sue is saying recommend granting this waiver. I would have, and again, anybody can chirp in as we go through these items one by one if they have an issue. I do have an issue about the impact on schools. We will later on tonight, if we ever finish this meeting, we'll be looking at a document that tells us how much capacity each and every one of our schools in Tiverton has. And we're going to find out that 2 of our schools are almost at capacity in terms of their school-aged population, the students attending. Those 2 schools being Ranger in the middle school. We'll be discussing this later this evening. I think that we need something from the applicant during master plan consideration, not as part of your master plan application necessarily, but something that you can generate from an expert that we would have before we vote on the master plan. Am I making myself clear here?
You are.
And for the record, I can agree to that.
That would give your estimate, so that we can compare your estimate with the superintendent of schools' estimate.
That's fair.
Okay, so the applicant is agreeing to that. So now I would, and everybody else seems to be agreeing to that. Again, just butt in or raise your hand.
So to be clear, on item 25, that we are not granting this waiver because we're not going to grant the waiver to wait until preliminary plan to get this information about the schools.
We are requesting the school-age population estimates from the applicant, their estimates, prior to voting on the master plan. The other items could be delayed until preliminary plan application.
Okay.
So,
Sue, did I get that right? So I'm just making a minor tweak in your recommendation.
We had, we had recommended granting the waiver, but it sounds like they don't need the waiver.
yeah,
because they are
we'll
providing
agree.
information at this
Yeah,
point.
we'll agree to the chairman's recommendation that that information be provided prior to master plan approval.
As I understand that, he's suggesting only the school-aged children. The other elements of checklist number 25 would be
Correct.
for preliminary plan.
For preliminary, right. So we'll have a
That's what I was trying to
report
get.
from an expert. Yeah, yeah.
So, I think we're all clear on that. So agenda item or checklist item number 26 is written comments from an ad hoc technical review committee. And Sue is recommending not granting this waiver. I would actually recommend granting the waiver and allow that to be something that is considered during our preliminary plan. So not even requesting a TRC meeting prior to a preliminary, but the TRCs are typically held during the preliminary plan because the preliminary plan is the stage of review where we go through the heavy-duty engineering. And I think our technical review committee made up of fire, police, DPW, a building official, they would like to see more of the heavy-duty engineering before they have a TRC meeting and come up with their recommendations. That's just my approach. You may agree with Sue's recommendations, but here I'm recommending that we grant the so-called waiver, which is really a delay in that we would certainly have a technical review committee meeting. And Sue, as the AO for this project, will be the one to convene that. But Sue, would you feel more comfortable convening a TRC meeting earlier, or?
It's the board's preference. You know, again, you're right that you don't have the full engineering. At the master plan level, it's just, identifying some, flagging some issues that, it would be good for the applicant to know before they start their engineering, in terms of what the fire department will require for turnarounds and things like that. I personally think it's helpful to the applicant to have it, but, it's the board's preference.
Well, the applicant has asked for it to be delayed.
Yeah,
So how do the rest of you feel on that? I don't want to speak for the board. I only have one vote here.
So my understanding of both points, and I get what Sue is talking, but if we wait until to have the TRC during the preliminary plan review, could that extend things further as opposed to perhaps getting some of the basics out of the way to make sure that, so it's a little bit of short-term pain, long-term gain in terms of expediting or creating more efficiencies, I would say, with the preliminary plan review.
But that's really the applicant's call, I would think. I mean, if the applicant wishes to move forward with a TRC earlier, they can always request that, and the planning board would go along with it. I'm just saying that if they do want to delay it, that's fine with me, because frankly, I think some of our TRC meetings have not been very productive because they've been held too early in the process. And our town experts don't have enough information to make a reasonable discussion. I'd also like to say that I'm sure the applicant is doing what every other major project application has done, and engaging in a dialogue with the fire marshal, and engaging in a dialogue with the building official already. I mean, they're doing that already. So they're getting feedback on an informal basis. The TRC is the more formal process where we'll all get to read the minutes. Okay. Anybody else? So what I think we are agreeing to here is to allow the applicant to decide when the TRC, when they're ready to have a TRC. But that would certainly be sometime during the preliminary plan stage. Am I correct about that, Mr. Mancini?
That's correct, yeah. And we agree with your thorough analysis. I mean, as we indicated in our memo, it's premature at this stage prior to master plan to really engage in a TRC. To do it meaningful, we really need the detailed architectural, civil engineering plans, and even some of the state approvals. In the meantime, we have met and will continue to meet, solicit information from water, from sewer, from fire. I mean, that's just practical, necessary engineering protocol, and,
Yes.
and we're going to engage in that.
Good. So if we're all very clear about this, I'd like to go on to agenda item or checklist item number 31, which is a determination letter from the building official or his designee prior to master plan approval. So this is not actually being asked as part of the master plan application. It's just during the master plan review. And Sue has recommended not granting this waiver or request. I have no problem with her recommendation. Anybody around the table have a problem with that recommendation? Does Mr. Mancini wish to make a compelling
Yes.
case?
So with regards to items 29, 31, 37, and 31, we've made the request of the particular departments. We don't think that those items, we don't think receiving feedback from those departments prior to certification of completeness is necessary. The request has been made, we're not asking that the request be waived, but just simply be delayed so it feeds through the process. So as we engage in the master plan process, you're going to hear the building officials' comments, you're going to hear the zoning officials' comments. We've provided you with water, you're going to hear fire department. I just don't think it's a necessary item as a requirement to engage in the process. The way the checklist is set forth, it reads as a condition precedent. And we just don't think that those, in many instances, even within town, my experience has been that those letters have been waived simply by saying we've made the request for those letters.
So a way you could balance that is requesting a copy of the letters that Mr. Mancini sent to those officials, if you don't want.
Yes. I'm convinced by Mr. Mancini in this particular instance, and I would suggest, and he mentioned several of the checklist items that are more or less in the same category. Would everybody feel comfortable just seeing the letter that the applicant is sending out to those officials so that we know that they have formally been asked to provide their input? But I think I'd also like to specify that we need letters from those officials in response. For the preliminary plan application, as part of the preliminary plan application. And then, right off the bat, entering preliminary plan, we'll have all of that technical feedback from our own people. Sue, can you live with that, or
It's
do you
the
think
board's
it's?
decision ultimately, but if you're also waiving the TRC at this point, I mean, these are sort of other ways for the town officials to weigh in on the project's feasibility. I mean, I think, he's saying he's requested them, maybe if you can get copies of them before the board Here's the master plan, you know, I don't know if you're also including in here the determination from the water authority, that there's adequate water to serve it.
Well,
I think that there's some like basic feasibility issues.
We-
But again, it's the, you know, it's the board's decision.
I think that the water situation, I think we would need a letter from the North Tiverton Fire District, which is the potable water authority for this project. We would need a letter from them prior to making a master plan decision. I would not feel comfortable voting on the master plan without knowing that North Tiverton Fire District has the water and has the infrastructure to deliver the water to the project. So I think that, I think I would like to request that those letters, that if Mr. Mancini can give us his letters to those officials as part of the master plan application, and he's got those letters already, that shouldn't be a problem. Would you, Mr. Mancini, agree to making sure that the various utilities provide you and us with their response prior to the planning board voting on the master plan application?
Well, I wouldn't do that prior to master plan, but certainly prior to preliminary plan. Because some items are going to, for example, with water. So we have a letter from the water department. They do have capacity, but that capacity is going to be based upon overall capacity in certain assumptions and certain models, which are going to be which will require us to do some engineering to. So we have sent them notice. We've gotten a letter back. But for us to get a final approval is going to require some detailed engineering. We won't be able to do that engineering at master plan, but we will for preliminary plan.
We would not need the detailed engineering. What we would need is a letter from North Tiverton Fire District saying, we think that if the applicant can do X, Y, and Z, that we can provide water without disrupting the rest of the system. So again, we will need a letter from North Tiverton because we're hearing that, so we would need a letter from North Tiverton without all of the engineering details, but just saying this is feasible, this can be done.
Yeah. We can do that.
Okay.
So you know, I mean, we have a letter from Stonebridge Fire District, which is the Northeast Water Solutions, and also North Tiverton. They've identified what needs to be done as far as providing water to the site. So water can be provided to the site. It's just a question of engineering. So we can accomplish that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can we have some discussion on this particular item here?
Yes.
Of waiving these? If we're going to give the applicant, fluidity on the TRC, to Susan's point, I would really like to see, prior to any approval at master plan stage, a definitive letters from the utilities saying that they can provide adequate water, sewage, and fire protection services. As it is, and it may be purely an oversight, there's information in the applicant's application here, which I don't, and to the best of the town administrator's knowledge, is not correct. There's a note in here that says somehow that North Tiverton and Stonebridge facilitated a meeting. That was facilitated by the town administrator. There's a note in here that says the Water Resources Board is providing grant monies for infrastructure improvements in Tiverton. To the best of the town of Tiverton's information, that is in fact not happening. There was a meeting with the Water Resources Board. The town has arranged for grant money to do a significant and thorough hydrologic study for both North Tiverton and Stonebridge to actually find out what the water capacity truly is or is not. And, you know, this is a really big application, and we are a small town with limited resources, and there will be a lot of time and effort on the part of the limited staff that we have to work with this application. And the utility pieces, the water, the sewer, and the fire suppression issues are very, very significant. And while there is talk about banding about, well, there's plenty of water, whether or not that's actually true, it's not the amount of water, it's the ability to deliver it into places and how much that infrastructure is going to cost and who's going to pay for that infrastructure, and whether or not the plants can actually generate the water, even if there's water available. So it's a lot more complicated. I think, in fairness to our staff here and the amount of work that goes into this, and honestly, you know, if I were the applicant, we should really know that there is or is not sufficient water, sewage, and fire suppression capacity for this application before we approve master plan. And I feel pretty strongly about that.
I completely agree with that, and, but I'm just wondering if North Tiverton Fire District and the Tiverton North Tiverton Fire District and Tiverton Wastewater District and the Fire Marshal give us letters that are very clear and say, this can be done. We haven't worked the engineering out altogether. We don't have an engineering plan, but we know that this can be done. That would satisfy my interest in this. But it has to be. But they have to. But in the case of water, which is the big issue here, and that comes from the North Tiverton Fire District. North Tiverton Fire District has a hydrological model of their system. They need to update that model so that they can run a computerized simulation showing what the impact is on the pipes and the pumping system and their entire infrastructure for getting that amount of water from the reservoir to the project, to the proposed development. They need to show us that, for example. That would be more or less a definitive thing. And that might also involve saying, but they're going to have a pump here, they're going to have to repipe a certain area here. So they would probably have a number of conditions. But we would still, I think, have the information we probably need to make a master plan decision. Then, at preliminary plan, then we can go into the engineering details. Would that satisfy you, Tricia, or?
It would satisfy me with this caveat. You know, anything can be done if you have enough money to do it. What I don't want to have happen is that we get, because keeping in mind, and for the benefit of everybody who's listening, we have no control whatsoever over the water districts or the wastewater district. They are independent government agencies. What I don't want to see is a letter that this can be done, but the fact is that in order to do it, it's going to cost very significant amounts of money, and the plan is that the citizens of Tiverton who reside in those districts are going to end up paying for that because it's going to get funded through, through charges that are going to get passed back to residents in the community. So I would like to know, can it be done today as it is? Can this be done today, right now? Or it cannot be done today, in which case, then somebody needs to explain to us how much this is going, if it's even possible, how much it's going to cost, and who is being expected to pay for this. That would make me more comfortable.
I would.
Our solicitor has his hand up.
I would, before I recognize the solicitor, I'd just like to say that we can also bring in the general manager of the North Tiverton Fire District during master plan and ask him about his letter and get details so that we're not agreeing to something that is going to cause problems. I happen to be part of the North Tiverton Fire District. I pay taxes and I pay water fees, and our water fees are the second highest in the state of Rhode Island, only exceeded by Block Island, New Shoreham. I see a number of other people around this table who are also suffering with North Tiverton Fire District bills. So yes, Tricia, would that satisfy you if we could bring the general manager in and say, okay, we've got your letter?
But I would like letters from the utility companies that states whether or not today, as it exists today, this development could be accommodated.
Okay.
By 2 water districts, Stonebridge as well.
Well, Stonebridge has not submitted water to this project.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Yeah, we've met with them as well.
Yes, they are.
You can waive it subject to having the applicant bring in the officials, each of them.
Yeah.
Would you agree to that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, look, it's part of the process. I mean, one of the things I want the board to be mindful of is,
Letter's not going to do it, Trish. Excuse me,
You know, go
Mr.
ahead.
Mancini. Letter can still be vague. No matter how precise you want them to write it, it's what they write. If you get them in front of you, you can ask them all your questions.
I would agree, and I expect them to come in front of us, but I would like to start with them putting something in writing. I'd like both, actually.
Okay.
I
Do
would
that
too, I would
Before
too.
before master plan approval.
correct.
Yes, correct.
So initially, Mr. Mancini is to provide us with his letters requesting these from each of the officials. Master plan approval is subject to letters from each of these officials. I guess it's 29 through 39 on the checklist.
Right, 20, yeah, you're correct. Well, it's
29,
20, yeah,
31, 37,
37, yeah.
38, and 39. The letter and his presenting them.
And 40, I think.
And 40 as well.
Is that,
And 41, sorry. Right,
And
that's-
41.
Yeah.
Yeah.
is that correct? Is that my understanding from the board?
Yes.
Yes.
And may I ask something of Mr. Mancini? In the memo
Is that good?
you gave us on the confirmation letters here, Tiverton wastewater and fire department, they're using the same engineer, Angelo Libertini,
Yeah, Liberati, yes.
Liberati?
Yeah.
It says.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, hold on.
No,
I'll have my engineer speak to that. I'm not qualified for that. Go ahead.
I mean,
No,
I don't know.
Angelo is with Tiverton Wastewater District. I think there's a typo.
I think it's a typo, but
Yes.
you know,
So he's with Tiverton?
Tiverton Wastewater District, yes.
and then up in the fire department, you have Angelo Libertini up there as district engineer for Tiverton wastewater district up there in that paragraph,
Yeah.
38.
Yeah, but that, right, and what we say there is with that, we've met with him, district engineer for Tiverton, and anticipate final determination will be obtained by master plan.
No, so we wanted him. We wanted Paul.
Oh, Paul, yeah, sorry, I got the wrong one, sorry.
But, and you also have Tiverton wastewater in both
Yeah.
letters.
So
Yep.
Molly, why don't you just?
Yeah, so
read
number
that out?
38 will be Paul LaRoe, General Manager of North Tiverton Fire District.
And what about Stonebridge?
Stonebridge is Tim Byrne and Carl Destremps as part of Stonebridge. And we also engage Robert Ferrari from Northeast Water Solutions because they do their capacity analysis.
Okay, I would put that in your,
Yeah, we received these after the first.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
And Molly, the last time I checked, Stonebridge, which I didn't think was providing any water for this project, but apparently they are, Stonebridge does not have a hydrologic model. And therefore, whatever they provide to us doesn't have much credibility with me. So they need a model, and they need to run this project through a computer simulation. So you might pass that on to Mr. Destramps, because I will make it very clear that a seat of the pants suggestion by anybody from that organization won't pass the test with me. We've had enough of that. Molly, did you get all that? Loud and clear? Good. So I think we've done everything now through, I think we've done, well, their own national organization called the American Water Works Association says that it is irresponsible not to have a model. So you can see I feel strongly about this. Okay, so I believe that brings us to number 47. I think we're agreeing, we're handling all of the different letters pretty much the same. Is everybody on the same page with me on that? So we want not only letters that are as detailed as we can possibly get them, but then we're going to call the officials in during master plan deliberation, master plan review, and ask them any questions that they haven't really addressed in their letter. So that brings us to item number 47 on the checklist, which is proposed grading plan. I think we all agree with Molly's recommendation that this be granted a delay until preliminary plan. So would you like that, Molly, as part of the
It's Sue.
preliminary
I think
plan?
that's
I mean, not Molly, Sue.
That's okay.
Would you like this as part of the preliminary plan application, or?
Yep, this is what they asked for, and we recommended granting it.
Okay, that's fine. And that brings us to number 48, proposed drainage plan. And again, we would like something, this can be delayed until preliminary plan stage. And again, as part of the preliminary plan application. Is that agreeable?
Yeah, that's agreeable, yes.
No,
Now, if the grading plan is not completely finalized, we could simply take what you've got.
That's right. We just
Which was
yeah.
actually Sue's recommendations, just a sort of a preliminary, a first draft, and then during the preliminary plan discussions, you can then have a lot more time to fill in the blanks.
We can agree to that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
agreeing to what?
Agreeing to exactly what Susan
What's in
suggested.
So the recommendation says partially granting this waiver and allowing the applicant to submit as a proposed drainage plan with details such as profile existing lines, addition of on-site drainage facilities to be conceptual in nature, with the understanding a more finalized plan gets submitted during.
You can agree with that,
That's
Mr.
fine, yes,
Mancini?
yes.
Board's comfortable?
Yes. Less detail for master, more detail for preliminary.
Correct.
Okay,
Right, it's broader strokes at master. That's how it's supposed to work.
okay.
So once again, item number 54 on the checklist, same recommendation that we allow, this happens to be more on the utilities. And Sue was saying, recommend granting this waiver if the applicant can provide a summary of the approach to utilities for master plan review. So we would get that at the master plan, and then you could continue to work on it when you submit your preliminary plan application and when we have a discussion.
Excuse me.
Preliminary plan stage.
I just want to make sure we're all clear as to what Sue is recommending here, a summary of the approach. Do you understand what that means?
We do. We can. It's essentially, as she said previously, it's a broad stroke. It's conceptual.
Your approach to it, right?
we
Like what your
can-
plans are to doing, and then you can list whatever conditions those would require. right?
Okay. Yeah, we can agree to that.
Okay, that brings us to attachment 3, site analysis map. And Sue is recommending granting this request for a delay, and this information be submitted at the preliminary plan stage. I would like to suggest, I agree with that in general, Sue, but I think that we need to take number 12, historic sites and buildings, out and give that special consideration because the land does sit on roughly about 12 to 13 acres of the land that the applicant is proposing to develop, overlaps with a state-recognized and federally recognized historic district, the Osborne-Bennett Historic District. And all of that information is now available, as I mentioned earlier this evening, to the applicant simply by going to the website of the state's Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission. So you can at least give that to us as part of the preliminary plan application. That shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes.
We can do that.
Can we just confirm?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you just said preliminary plan, but what I think we're hearing is that items number 10, wildlife habits, item number 11, scenic view shed, and item 15, land under conservation easement or development restrictions can be waived for master plan, and we get the detail in preliminary. But what you're saying is that you want item 12, historic sites and buildings, as part of master plan.
As part of the master plan.
Okay.
Because it is being followed with great interest by a number of people in the town of Tiverton. And I don't want to vote on a master plan until I know precisely how they intend to protect those particular acres. And there is also a letter which I asked, which I believe everybody has, from the then chairman of the commission, the state commission, having to do with an earlier application for this very same piece of land, the Carpianato mixed-use proposal 10, 11 years ago, that says if this land is disturbed, then we and the federal government will take it off the register of a historic district. So we do have that. I believe I gave a copy of that letter to Ed for distribution. I don't know if that ever happened or not, but if it didn't, we will certainly make sure all board members have that letter, because it's still relevant. Nothing has happened to that land since Carpianato went away.
Mr.
Okay.
Rotella, please make sure Mr. Mancini gets a copy of that as well.
I'm coming in tomorrow, Ed. I'll bring another copy with me. Okay? So that brings us to.
I'm sorry,
yes.
what are we doing then?
We're going to agree that 10, 11, and 15 will be provided at preliminary. Number 12 will be provided at master plan.
Right.
And we agree that's a very good point, because one of the issues I noted at the onset is we need to determine those boundaries, because that's going to dictate land suitable for development, which is going to dictate density. So we're okay with doing that at master plan.
One additional item that we might want, that we might request, would be something from the Pokanoket Wampanoag historic officer out of Mashpee on the Cape, because they did take a look at that land 11, 12 years ago, and they made some claims about that land. Now, I don't know if they have anything to back that up, but that's something that we might want to explore, but we can talk about that later on. I don't think that just sort of a heads up. So does everybody agree to what we're doing? Everybody understands what we're doing here in this attachment 3?
No, I want to be very clear. Item number 12, the historic sites, do you want that prior to the certification of completeness or during the master plan hearing?
We could get that. Well, it's not, all we're asking for really is something that I think you've already got. I don't know, Molly, if that's in your bailiwick or not. I know history is not engineering, but you do know the land. And Sue, do you have any thoughts about that? But I was under the impression that you had this information already, that you knew a great deal about the history of that land, and about the historic designation, and that you could provide that as part of the master plan application. If you'd like a further delay, I probably wouldn't object, but I would certainly like to see that during master plan. Does everybody agree with that? Would everybody be comfortable seeing that as provided during master plan review, as opposed to requiring it up front as part of the master plan application?
As long as it's part and parcel of the master plan approval,
Yes.
I'm least concerned
Right.
about sort of if it's before or during, right?
Exactly,
Like,
that's
it
my-
has to be considered.
That's my feeling, and I'm
Yeah.
bending over backwards to give the applicant as much time as they need. I don't think that this is a time-consuming matter, so I think we're all agreed that, that items 10, 11, and 15 can be a part of the preliminary plan application submission. But that number 12, historic sites and buildings, that be something that you provide during
Okay.
master plan discussion, master plan review, rather than as part of the master plan application itself, if you want to move forward. Sue is shaking her head, so I think
I
she's
agree, yeah, I
she's
mean,
agreeing
like,
to that.
like you said, it does affect like what you can do where, so.
Dick?
Yeah, you know, that's one of those things that, hey, once it's gone forever.
Oh, I know. That's a discussion we'll have.
And, you know, and so if it proceeds too far, I mean, you can't get that too early because it's not that difficult to ascertain. Looked like it was running either through or very close to the structures.
Yeah.
That were on your plan before.
Yeah, you're right. So we have that information, but I think what you really want is more, what we want to provide is more depth to that information. So we want to do that during master plan. Again, we don't think it should be a condition precedent to a certificate of completeness to come before you. I think it's something that gets discussed and evolves through the process and allows you to even review it, maybe ask more questions, obtain more information, and I think that it makes sense for the applicant to do it during the master plan process. I want to know, because I think this is an important point, come January, which is only a couple of weeks away, master plan goes away under 4553.
We understand that.
But we want.
You could have delayed your application until
Totally. And
after
this
January
is the-
1st.
That's right, and this is the point I want
But
to
you
make.
didn't.
We didn't, because we think that master plan for this project is important, because there are so many variables that need to be flushed out and
Yep.
confirmed during a
Absolutely.
master plan review before we get to
Absolutely.
preliminary.
Absolutely.
Utilities being one of them, historic being another, school age determination being a third. And it would not, for this project, it just wouldn't be sensical for us to come at preliminary plan and say, hey, we've got everything, you gotta give us
I think
approval.
we're all on the same page
Yeah,
with
I
respect to
agree.
that. So let's go on to Article 11, Section 5, application requirements. And here, we've got several categories. The first, well, why don't you walk us through this, Sue, because
I
this
can,
is a little
yeah.
more technical.
And on these, actually, most of these, we recommend granting these waivers. There were two exceptions. It's that first one, which we talked about when I was still standing at the podium, that the information, has been provided. And so we can just, it looks like it's plan set number 3, or plan number 3, sheet number 3, of the plan set has this.
John, I think Sue's point on that one is it just needs to be provided as part of the comprehensive permit application, not as part of the major land development application.
That's fine, yeah, okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I just you didn't need to ask for a waiver for it, I guess, because you did provide it. You could have just said, see,
Okay, we can do
You're
it.
So-
putting them both together anyway.
So you'll
Yeah,
provide,
we'll provide that.
Yeah. And then the only other additional information at this stage, we recommended that the board might want to know, obviously a lot of this stuff will be fleshed out later, what AMI, the low and moderate income units, will be targeting at this point.
Yeah, we don't, honestly don't even know at this point. So we don't know we have our letter of eligibility that we've provided. I don't know what kind of information we can give you with regards to the AMI and the LMI units at this point.
What is AMI? LMI is low and moderate
Yeah.
income. What is AMI?
It's affordable. So it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think the area AMI is area median income.
Yeah.
And so there's a big difference between, I think it can go up to 120% of the area median income.
Yeah,
Or
and
down to 30%. And so
Yeah.
it's a pretty big range. I know, I think it's a pretty big range, and so we kind of thought that this could be good information. And even if it's something that does change, because we're not, we're saying that the pro forma can be provided later, so it might shift. It might just be good to, see from the applicant what what they will be targeting, as far as the population that they want to serve with their affordable units.
So could we handle this? Could we ask that sometime during master plan review, before we actually vote on the master plan, if you will provide us with as much information as you have at that point, and do that in writing, again, we'll revisit in more detail when we get to preliminary plan, but just provide us with as much information as you can, because it is something that's going to be of interest, I think, and to see, to learn as much as we can about those affordable units for low and moderate income households. So,
So can we just get confirmation that that is feasible by the applicant?
Yeah, we can do that. And prior to master plan approval, we can get you as much information that we have available to us at that point. At that point, we probably will have more, because a lot of these other items will be addressed.
Yeah.
And so we'll have a better feel for what, in Rhode Island housing will also be very important and helpful to us in that regard at that point.
So prior to master plan approval?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would like to make a request that prior to master plan approval, we receive information, and this is going to the last page, page 5, the third and fourth items down on page 5, the fourth and fifth items down on page 5, well, it depends on how you, but I'm talking about section 5B2 and section 5B3. The first one has to do with architecture and getting a sense of what the buildings will look like. Again, I'd like to handle it the same way that we just discussed earlier with respect to the low and moderate income affordable housing. Provide us with what you can during our master plan deliberation. I'm sure you've got an architect.
Yeah.
I'm sure the architect has drawings, has scaled architectural renderings. I would like to see something before I approve a master plan. I do not want to, get a pig in a poke. I want to see what the buildings will actually look like. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be exactly that way, but just a general rendering of what the project will look like. And then on the next item, which is 5B3, this is talking about the number of the number of buildings and also the bedrooms. The bedrooms are absolutely essential in terms of school-aged population. I need to know before I'm comfortable approving a master plan, how many bedrooms we're talking about. Are these units going to be mostly 3-bedroom? Are they going to be only 2-bedroom? Are some of them going to be 1-bedroom, which means no school kids at all? I want to know. And we got this information from the last big comprehensive permit project, and it was very helpful, and it stayed the same. But if you could just give us, at the master plan stage, again, it doesn't have to be exact, the number may change a little bit, but we need to know how many bedrooms we're talking about. Does everybody agree with that? I mean, I don't know how you can give us an estimate or a guesstimate of school-age population without knowing that. That's, you go to a consultant and say, how many school kids will our project generate? And the first thing they're going to say is, tell me the bedrooms.
Yeah, we can agree to that. We have that information.
Okay.
We can agree to that.
Well, you also can't calculate water usage or
Yes.
wastewater discharge without knowing how many bedrooms there are.
In bathrooms.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can't.
we have that.
Okay.
So you'll provide Mr. Mancini?
We'll provide, that's
prior-
actually already, it's prior to master plan approval, but it's already in your package. It's part of the letter of eligibility, which identifies the number of 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and the number of bathrooms as well.
And you'll also provide the architectural
And we'll
drawings under
provide the
5A.
architectural drawings. There are conceptuals part of your plan set now. They do contain elevations, but we'll have even more detailed floor plans for our master plan approval. But yes.
So
Thank
Sue,
you.
are you good with what we're doing, and do you understand what we just agreed to?
I did, I wrote it down.
Excellent, and does everybody else understand? So we're going along with Sue's recommendations that these items under Article 21, Section 5, these items be granted, but we're setting conditions to say we need as much information as you have at master plan, during our master plan deliberations, during our review of the master plan, on bedrooms, on architecture, and on the affordable units.
Fair enough. And also.
And those numbers may change, and those designs may change a little bit, but we don't want to see something completely different when we get into the preliminary plan, because that would be bait and switch.
Susan, we'll also identify for you, right now, we have 80% AMI.
Okay.
So we're not doing LMI, we're at 80% AMI, and that's 57 units. And that's based on our Rhode Island Housing Plan. And that may change, but
Okay,
at least we have an idea.
Thank you. I think we have given you what you requested. I think that this planning board has been very reasonable in coming up with a plan that you can live with and that we can live with. And I would like to especially thank Sue Mara for the wonderful background she did on all of this. When I got your 2 memos, I was thinking, oh my goodness. There's a lot of paperwork there, but Sue cut through the paperwork and got right to the essence of it. Thank you, Sue.
I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure we close the circles here. Article 21, the board is recommending to follow is granting the waivers that Sue is recommending as to 5A6, 5A8, 5A9, 5A10. Is that correct? Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I think we just need to I can make a motion. I can verbalize the motion, and somebody can say, I make so moved.
Well, I think that all we need is a motion to approve the recommendations that Sue Mara has granted with the amendments that we have agreed to tonight, without enumerating what all of those are, because that would take a half an hour.
I don't think it'll take a half an hour, but if you're comfortable with that, and if Mr. Mancini is, so be it.
I'm okay with that, because I think we can,
Can
I
you-
think we've
can you
memorialized
memorialize
that, and I'll
it? Can you-
provide the
Yeah,
transcript.
luckily.
I
Yeah.
have it all written down.
Yeah.
I took notes as well, in the table.
What do you recommend, Ashley? Can
I
we?
took notes in the table, I added a column to the table digitally, so if you have
And,
an updated copy,
and,
I can.
and we're
Sue
all
has
on,
access
and
to.
we're all on TV. We're all being filmed for YouTube. So I think we've been pretty specific.
There still has to be a motion.
Yeah.
So I
Second.
would like to make a motion then that we approve Sue Mara's recommendations with the amendments
As amended.
as amended with the amendments that we've approved tonight. And do I have a second?
Second.
Now, do I have discussion? Because now we can discuss further if anybody has questions or further discussion. Yes, Tricia?
Does the solicitor have a list of all of these agreed to amendments?
I do, and Ashley was also.
And Ashley does. In which case, I would like to see if you would amend the motion as amended and annotated by the solicitor. So that Todd's list is the list without any debate.
That's good. That's excellent. Yes. Yes, I would, did I make the motion, or did?
You made the motion.
I made the motion and you
Dick
seconded it.
seconded.
And Dick seconded it. Then I would like to amend my motion based on what Tricia Hilton has just said, that we reference the list that our solicitor has put together, and include that in the motion. So Todd's list is the official list. Good, okay. And Dick, do you agree to that amendment? Okay, so now we have an amended motion. Do we have discussion on the amended motion? Seeing no discussion, those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. See, it wasn't all that bad.
No, it was good, actually, probably, to go through it.
John, so the time clock hasn't restarted yet, not
I
until
know,
you submit.
until we submit, yeah. But at least we have your list to know what's going to be.
And you have your transcript, and call me if you have questions.
Yep, but we'll probably confirm it in writing to you as to the resubmission.
Why don't we put together another column on this Excel sheet and share that with you?
Yeah, please. Yeah,
You can
perfect.
go,
Thank
but
you. Thank you.
I'm not breaking this. I'm not breaking this. I don't do that.
We're going to supplement.
So now I'd like to, I'm reminding everybody that we're only partway through our meeting. If you'd like to have a conversation, please go outside. And I'd like to call Mr. Ditton, and I saw Don Medeiros. There he is. Mr. Ditton and Mr. Medeiros. And this is something that we heard back September 12, 2023. So Andrew Ditton and Don Medeiros were with us back in September. We discussed at that time a two-lot subdivision at 3407 Main Road. That's in South Tiverton. It's roughly across from the Pardon Gray Preserve. And it's plat 709, lot 102. It's roughly 8 acres, isn't it, Andrew?
Yes.
About 8 acres. And you're proposing, you were proposing a two-lot conventional minor subdivision, but Ashley suggested that you might have fewer dimensional issues, frontage issues, if you went with rural residential, and specifically a rural compound subdivision, and you've agreed to do that, or you've come back with that. And Ashley has provided you with a list of items that you will need to, you'll need to produce, but, and maybe Ashley can summarize those if she feels like it. But now we're talking about a rural compound housing subdivision, and no relief is now needed from the zoning board. And we do have a letter dated October 17 from the applicant's engineer, Don Medeiros, suggesting a path forward, how we handle this project as we go forward. And Ashley, well, maybe I'll ask Don to summarize that, and then I'll ask Ashley if she thinks that that's a good idea. Don, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Sorry, sir,
I'd like
can you
to
speak in?
apologize for being late. I'm hardwired to thinking public hearings start at 7 o'clock, so I won't make that mistake again. Appreciate the board working with us on this application. The items that we will be providing and have in progress is the DEM subdivision suitability, the DOT physical alteration permit for the curb cut, the stormwater design, the shared driveway design, and the soil erosion and sediment control plan. In addition, under the existing conditions, the Class 1 survey is in progress and will be completed. Permanent monuments, existing and proposed, will be shown, set, and identified. Flagged wetland boundaries and buffer within 200 feet of the perimeter of the parcel, or an affidavit saying that none exist. And that's pretty much it from, I think, from our side of the table. But yes, could we hear from Ashley, please?
So Ashley?
So, Stu, as you mentioned, this was before you requesting, they were gonna be requesting waivers. We asked them to look at the compound. They came back with an application that meets the compound requirements. At that meeting in October, you had authorized them, the board had authorized them to come back with an application that delayed the submission of many of the required checklist items based on the fact that they would be going to zoning. They wanted to go to zoning, get their initial, or get their approval from zoning, and then come back to planning with that information. And so we've listed those items as conditions of approval, for them to be conditioning, for you to be conditioning the preliminary plan on those items that are listed, in the memo to you.
So, Ashley?
Yes.
What is the next step?
So I think, you know, it's been indicated that many of these are currently in process and that you would be, you know, that they would be amenable to providing these as soon as they're available. So it's just a decision of the board is whether or not you feel comfortable waiving these items or delaying the submission of these items for a final plan, and then it, you know, for consideration, do you want that final plan to then come back to you because you haven't seen these items on the plans, or do you want to allow the final plan to be done administratively with the understanding that many of these items are things that, you know, I will be reviewing and checking whether or not they've been provided. I think, you know, under normal circumstances, when you see all of these items, it's an easier transition to an administrative final, but because these are, you know, some of these are somewhat significant items, I would, you know, ask you to consider whether or not you're comfortable not seeing the result of that delayed submission as part of a final plan. But those are essentially your options there. Is approving the preliminary plan with those items as a condition of approval to be submitted at the final plan submission.
So, I will ask my colleagues to offer some feedback on that, offer some response. And I think Rosemary
does have a few comments, and I have to say, Mr. Ditton, it's a lovely piece of land. I walked it the other day. I asked permission to park, and I walked it down there. And I did make a couple minor things here, Don, on the plan. I didn't see a stone wall up on the east side between the other properties. House 3387 and House 3389, there's a stone wall there. There's an opening, which I guess you'll probably put a stone, close it up from the property in the front. The opening that was on the other parcel, where I got in, they were terrific there. And I didn't see any permanent bounds. And this is not just to you, Mr. Ditton, but I want to make sure that this board makes sure that there are permanent bounds put into the parcels that we subdivide or review, because it has come to my attention that bounds haven't been put in. And in the future, in 100 years, it'll be helpful.
So could you please describe what a permanent bound is?
Permanent bound is a concrete the boundary of the parcel, so that
Can't be moved.
cannot be moved. Don can explain it better. 'cause
I
he's-
think they'd also include drill holes and stones.
The old
Iron
timers
rods
did.
driven into stone
Right.
walls. Yeah, we've already, as I mentioned earlier, that the Class 1 survey is already underway. We've already,
I heard that.
and you're correct, the plan doesn't show the stone
Right.
wall, but it will. We've already survey located it. and-
Terrific.
And yes, we will be showing permanent bounds for the perimeter of the parcel as well as the division line between the two lots, and to delineate the common driveway.
And the corners of the property, I mean, where that huge rock is, I mean, it is to the north. And also on the plan, Don, the Pardon Gray is spelled incorrectly. Gray, you've got EY.
Okay, thank you.
And the bounds.
That's a color, not a name.
But personally, I would rather the board, I don't mean to hold you up, but I would rather, since there are so many outstanding issues, I'd just like to see it come back to the board, but that's I'm only one vote.
How do the rest of you feel?
I'm comfortable, based on this application, that I think that I'd be okay with the administrative officer doing the final approval on this pending. While there is there's certainly a list, I think that those things are all pretty black and white. They're either delivered as they're requested or they're not. So I'd be comfortable with the administrative officer having the authority to do the final approval here.
Right, I guess I feel the same way. I think that, I don't think anything is going to slip by Ashley.
She's got so much
So,
on her plate,
I know,
feel
I know.
badly for her.
I do have a quick question, though. So a rural compound does involve some open space land, roughly,
Not this kind.
No, it doesn't.
not this kind, okay. So, but your, your intention is not to further subdivide this land. In other words, you're not going to come back in a year and say, no, we'd like to have another minor subdivision and more houses. Is there anything, Mr. Solicitor, that we can do by way of requesting maybe a deed restriction on future development? I'm not sure that that's possible.
You could do a condition of approval. No further subdivision.
Yes, but how would that be enforced?
Put it on the plan.
It's going to be recorded
On
in
the
the plan.
plans, recorded on the plans.
Plan
Okay,
and the
right.
decision.
And the owners of the two lots will manage that open space however they wish, and probably the best management style is to do nothing. Okay, that answers my question. Does anybody else have any other questions? Are we prepared to actually approve a preliminary plan tonight with authorization that the final plan be? Okay, and do you have that language anywhere?
I provided you with a draft decision. You should have it Ed printed it and put it in front of you. So that memo right there, if you flip the page,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, we just got this tonight.
you did. My apologies for that.
okay,
But you do have it.
I hadn't looked at it.
So
And
there-
so we would need, now, I don't know if some of you would like more time to take a look at this. I personally think that this is a terrific development. I mean, I'd rather not have any development at all, but
But
this
people
is,
might
this
wanna
is the
go out
kind
and
of
see it.
development that really fits with the neighborhood, and will not obstruct any view shed from Main Road. Everything has been done with great sensitivity to the land and to the historic features like stone walls. So I'm quite comfortable moving forward, but tell me if anybody is not. We could ask them to come back in January.
Or when Don finishes the plan.
I would be okay accepting like this. I read through when I arrived this evening. I think personally I would be okay approving as long as we are adhering and the applicant can meet the letter of the conditions of approval that Ashley has set out in her memo dated December 4th, 2023.
Have you seen all those conditions? You have that?
That's it.
Okay.
Yes.
So there are quite a few conditions here that are specified.
Are you making that motion, Bill?
No, we're just polling.
I'm getting the sense, but my sense is that everybody is pretty much feeling comfortable with moving ahead.
So I just want to add a condition, because I'm looking at the compound, and it says that all rural residential developments must include a restriction on all impacted property deeds that prevents the further subdivision of land.
Oh, good.
So that is a required condition, and it
that's
should
it.
be on the plans that are recorded.
Okay, Don. Well, I'm going to go ahead then and make a motion that we approve the findings of fact, the draft findings of fact, and the conditions of approval in Ashley's memo, and that we approve preliminary plan with the understanding that the applicant doesn't have to come back before the planning board for final. The final will be approved administratively by Ashley after she makes sure that all of the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed and all of the information that's been promised has come in and is adequate. So I would make that motion, so just a single motion for the whole thing, or would you feel more comfortable if we did two motions?
I'm fine with a single motion,
Just a
but I
single
think
motion.
your motion is conditions in the memo and as amended by Ashley this evening.
Yes, and the additional condition that was added by Ashley this evening. Yes, Tricia?
So I wonder, and this is the question for Todd, if the subdivision, the no further subdivision clause needs to be not only in the plan, is it recorded as part of the deed or just in the plan?
Decision too,
It's going to be in on the plan and in the
And
written
in-
decision.
Yeah.
and in the deed.
It says here that it, on all impacted property deeds.
So then yes on the deed.
So,
Yeah, I would feel a lot more comfortable with the deed, because 15, 20 years from now, no
well,
one is going to
well,
come
here,
back
but
and
here's,
check the plan.
well, the reason I'm asking that, and we don't see these very often, it's a great thing, but we don't see them. But there are other restrictions as to what you can do on a rural, in other words, you can't have any commercial activity. There are limitations, and this is one of these things, if it's not recorded in the deed, 20 years from now, somebody may be using a rural residential development property outside of what the restrictions are. I mean, they're not terribly onerous, they're basically that it's residential and residential only, but I wonder if both of those things should be recorded as part of this. Or at least noted that it's approved as a rural residential.
Rural compound.
A rural compound.
So,
As the ordinance was in effect in
So that
2020.
it ties back to the rest of the restrictions that are part of the zoning that go with being a rural.
right, so there's more of a paper trail here.
We just don't see these very often, and I think sometimes they can fall through the cracks, down the road.
A lot of things fall through the cracks. So, Ashley, are you good with that? Should I amend my motion to?
Let's withdraw your motion and just start again so everyone's clear.
Okay.
Right.
So I think that what I can do is I can go through the compound requirements and come up with things that we want specifically noted. Like it talks about single-family dwellings, and you can't have manufactured homes and mobile homes and But I think that it's pretty easy to come up with what that list is, and, you know, Todd can confirm it, and we can just make sure that that's reflected on the plans and in the deeds.
Representative list referring back to residential, whatever the title is of the ordinance,
Article 8.
in effect in 2024.
Right.
Okay, Todd.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Why don't
that's
you
fine.
now give us the text for the motion? Because the motion has gotten a little more complicated. So we had an earlier amendment from.
No, I think we can make it simple, though, Stu.
Okay.
Approve preliminary plan, findings of fact as proposed by Ashley in her memorandum of December 4, with conditions as proposed in that same memorandum and as amended tonight, to specifically include deed restrictions and reference in deed to residential, what's it titled?
Rural residential compound.
Rural residential compound ordinance.
Yes.
Fair?
Yes. Okay, I will make that motion.
Second.
And Tricia seconds it. Any further discussion on this?
Yeah,
Seeing none?
Yes, he
Yes,
did.
okay, Dick does.
Yeah, my only problem with this was the difficulty at seeing the property. I went down twice in September and, you don't know, well, I'm not as scary as Rosemary. I didn't knock on any doors to see if I could get through it, but, I mean, you just can't really see a whole lot from Maine.
One thing I should
Other
have
than big
mentioned
lawn.
when the previous applicant was before us is that we have had a long, rich tradition, especially when Rosemary was chair, of doing site walks. I'm not sure that I would have been too excited about a site walk for this because it's just a two-lot, and they're not proposing a lot of changes. But Dick, certainly for anything as big as the project that we heard earlier tonight, a site walk is something that we will definitely want to arrange.
And I'll also offer that if anyone does want to visit the property, the planning department can help you get in touch with the applicant. Like, we can do it that way, where if you want to specifically see a site on your own time, we'll reach out to the applicant on your behalf, get permission for you so that you're not, wandering around and wondering if you should knock on someone's door.
Oh, I had to park my car off the road, and I wanted to park in the adjacent property, and that's why I went in there.
Because we should be doing it one of two ways. Either you get permission from the property owner, officially, or we schedule it as a site walk and it's a posted meeting. I don't think we should be doing like one-offs and people just kind of swinging by and
Yeah,
trespassing
yeah.
on their own time.
I think
We
there
should
should-
be
there should be
doing
a
it as a
process.
sanctioned process where either we get you permission through the applicant or we set up a site walk.
Yeah.
A site
Yeah,
walk
that'd be
has to be
great for the future.
advertised.
Yes.
I'd be all for
Yeah.
that.
Do you want to see the GIS photos, Dick?
And GIS
I looked at-
is, the
I
aerial
looked at it,
photographs are another way to, it doesn't,
Right.
you don't get to walk the property, but it does provide a lot of context to the site and the surrounding area.
Right, especially if it's done in the winter.
I don't know, for 10 years, I walked every piece of property that came up before the planning board.
Yeah.
But there, I got permission for the conservation and the building official.
Right.
Right on the application. They
Right.
granted permission for us to go.
I tend to do the same
And we
thing.
had it on our applications a long time ago, too.
Yeah,
and it
well,
got
that's what I'm
wiped
saying,
out.
that's
Right.
where we put it.
Because former solicitors said that we could put it on there, so.
I suggest, I'm gonna call the question, because
Mr.
Yeah,
Dick-
we have a motion.
Yeah, we
and
got
a
plenty
second.
of things.
Exactly, we're getting off topic here. So we have a motion, we have a second, we have had our discussion. I don't see any other hands going up for further discussion on this motion. All of those in favor? It is unanimous.
I didn't do the final plan administratively, though. So we need a second motion.
So now I will make a second motion that Ashley be authorized to, as AO and planner, to approve the final plan administratively based on conditions being met. all conditions being met, and all legal documentation being submitted and approved by the solicitor.
Second.
And we have a second from Bill Gerlach. Is there any further discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All of those in favor? It's unanimous again. Congratulations, and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
all, board members,
Thank you, Mr. Jitten.
and I'm happy to arrange site visits.
You're not here.
Well, you have refreshments?
No, but the family that sold the lot to us lives right up front.
I knew the family.
Yeah, the Bumpus and Snow, and they're happy to let you into their driveway, you can drive right onto the property. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 4, Planning Board 4A, Abigail Estates. So Abigail Estates was actually approved years ago, good 10 years ago, and maybe even more. And it's a 12-lot subdivision abutting North Brayton Road in South Christopher. Excuse me, if you'd like to discuss, please leave, even though it's cold. So this is under planning board items. So this is Abigail Estates is very near Ranger School, and we last heard from Abigail September 12, and then again on October 3rd. And I think we're looking at 2 items to be covered tonight. The applicant is asking for a minor change, and his legal counsel is here. Hello, Bo. And let me finish with this before we make a point of order. So this would be a minor change to the recorded plan for a change in street lighting. I know, I see that too. And secondly, we need to get a quick update on what improvements still need to be done for the project to be completed and for the surety to be released. So we have both Bo Akers representing the developer, and we have the legal counsel for the homeowners association, and I'm hoping that we can get a Mike Monty, and I'm hoping that Mike will give us some indication on how the homeowners are feeling. So I'm gonna ask Bo to start this by telling us,
I'll say something.
giving us the 2 options with respect to streetlights. We all have a memorandum and pictures of the streetlights, the very decorative streetlights that were originally part of the plan, the final plan. And we also have pictures of the less decorative streetlights that I guess Mr. Akers is suggesting be installed, because the less decorative ones can be installed more quickly.
Mr. Chairman, you have summed that up better than I probably could. That's essentially it. We have the original ones on order that are decorative pursuant to the final plans that were approved by the planning board. And then we also have the alternatives, which can be manufactured and, delivered for installation much sooner.
Yep.
That time frame, hang on one second.
You put that in your memo.
I did. I believe it was.
So it was like 12 to 14 weeks for the more decorative ones, but
Yeah, and then
but
4
two
to
to
6
4 weeks for,
About 6 weeks for the alternatives, if you give it a cushion there. But like 4 to 6 weeks for the alternatives to be brought, and 10 to 12 weeks for the decorative. So that's kind of the issue as far as timing.
Yep.
My client can get the alternatives, which are less decorative, quicker. So that's what we're presenting to the board.
so I'd like to ask Mr. Monty, does the homeowners association or the how do they feel about the streetlights?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that is an important point. I represent the 12 individual lot owners, not the association. The lot owners prefer the original streetlights. I was able to get confirmation of that today following getting the official timeline yesterday. So I'm not sure if, based on receiving that information, which I just informed my brother of this evening, if they still intend to push for the proposed change or withdraw that, knowing that the homeowners prefer the originals.
I could have gone either way, but I'll stick with the homeowners, my own personal view on that. Let's deal with that issue, and then we can go on to a quick update on the checklist, because we do have some, I don't see Bill, yes, I do. Dick Rogers is with us tonight, and so he has sent us a memo with an updated checklist of items that still need to be completed before the surety is released. But how do you all feel about the streetlights? Do you want to go with the homeowners? They want the original streetlights that are even more decorative. I'm seeing Chris says yes. I'm going to poll people. Bill?
If that's the homeowner's wish, then I can support that.
Janice? Dick?
I think the
Janice says
homeowners
yes.
have waited long enough.
Yeah.
And if they want, willing to wait.
If they're willing to wait
get what
longer.
was originally approved,
Yeah.
then I think that's
That's my,
only right.
that's my feeling too, Rosemary. Homeowners, and Tricia?
Homeowners, although I do have a question about that. So, the homeowners do understand, though, that by opting for these streetlights, ultimately they're responsible for them, correct? That when the town, if the town has to replace streetlights on an accepted street, that the town just puts in the vanilla streetlights. You don't get the fancy things replacement, right?
That is not my understanding of us making this representation this evening, that we prefer the original streetlights.
According to the ordinances, if the town is expected to maintain these lights, you have to get approval from the town council after this board. That's
Right.
that's Article 70-8.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that the developer will seek that the streetlights be, that all of the public improvements, including the streetlights, be adopted. But I don't have control over that.
Well,
And he can certainly request, doesn't mean the council's going to agree.
I just think that in terms of the homeowners making a decision, they should have, I'm fine with whatever they want. Whatever the homeowners want, I'm going to support. I just think that they should make sure that they have all the facts, because, and in general, the council, and Rick Rogers can speak to this, but in general, the council, when they accept a street and take responsibility for improvements on the street, generally, they're to the standard of vanilla, like whatever the town does. It's not that the town takes responsibility for replacing or repairing, special things. So it might be that at some point, if one of these streetlights fails, I don't know how many there are, you have 5 fancy streetlights, and then you're going to get the standard, National Grid like streetlight. So I just think that it's important that the homeowners know that in making this decision, if they expect the town to be somehow to be responsible for them.
Well, I think between the two alternatives, right, the same problem arises if 15 years from now, if the less decorative streetlights are chosen, and then one of those needs to be replaced, the town might replace it with an even less decorative streetlight. The homeowner's preference with the information available today is for the originals.
Well, alternatively, the homeowners association can be created and agree to maintain those lights.
my clients are not going to agree to take on that responsibility.
Okay.
VA,
Homeowners.
okay. So Rick is here, and Rick can get up anytime and say anything he'd like to say. But I think that that the agenda item has been satisfied, that we have now made a decision on the streetlights. And so it is the original, which is part of the original plan.
I think there needs to be a motion and a vote.
So, I would make a motion to not have a minor amendment to the final plan, but to stick with the final plan and with the lighting that was specified in the final plan. Do I have a second? I think Chris beat you, Dick, so. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion? I guess not. Those in favor?
I do have a question. So how did the decorative lights get into play? How did the homeowners get convinced that they were available? Now they're hearing that they might have switched light bulbs somewhere in the future. How does that happen?
So I'm happy to briefly speak on that. So my understanding is that on the original plans that were approved for this project roughly 10 years ago, these specific lights were included as part of that plan.
Yeah, it's a cut sheet on the approved plans. It's page 7 or 8.
So then, as part of this process, there's been, well, how come the streetlights haven't been installed? How come they haven't been installed? Apparently, they haven't been available. Because the homeowners are now involved in this process, the question was posed to them, hey, do you mind if we go with a different streetlight? And my client saw both cut sheets and preferred the originals. So that's the extent of it, really.
It's that simple.
It's that easy, very simple.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor? Okay, now the second item on the agenda.
Is it B, Abigail, B on the agenda?
No, it's Abigail A2, if you want to call it that, Rosemary.
Yeah.
Update as to progress.
Yeah. So we're simply asking for an update on, and Rick, if you'd like to come forward at this point, because the next agenda item, we're going to need you as well. And you can stand right at the podium and speak into the mic. So Rick Rogers is our DPW director and has a real interest in streetlights. I know. He's told me.
Good evening.
So we'd like an update. I think I'm going to ask Bo to give us his update, and then we'll see if Dick agrees to that. What has been done lately to go down the checklist of items that still need improvements, that still need to be made before the surety is released, and what are the timelines now looking like for getting those items done?
Well, I know there's about 6 items left here on this punch list. It's shrunken drastically since we had these discussions the last couple months.
Yes.
Possibly reseed. I'll defer to Mr. Rogers on that one. I believe that the landscaping was taken care of, and I've reached out to my client's landscaper regarding that. Install streetlights as per approved plans. Obviously, that was item 1 that we discussed tonight, and we know the timelines for that. Submission of fire department regarding the fire hydrants. I had submitted that, I believe, last week to the town and to the solicitor as well as Mr. Monty here. Now, when it comes to the as-built and the stamp sign plans by Rhode Island professional land surveyor, I am working with my client on that, on those aspects, to confirm whether or not those have been done, and to work with the engineers if they haven't to get those going. And then as far as HOA, that's been on my client's end and our position. The HOA documents have been executed, accepted, and recorded. My brother here and his clients disagree with the validity of those things. That being said, as we have been discussing, the paving, the landscaping, the street lighting, and all these issues that we've been knocking out here, that's been one of them that we're working on right now. And Attorney Monty and I have been in discussions on what ways we can come to any agreements as far as HOAs. So we're not there yet, but we are much closer to having that dispute resolved.
Thank you both. And we all have a memo dated November 27 from Rick Rogers. Rick, would you like to say anything about that, or has anything changed
No,
from what you reported to us in that memo?
I'm not
It's
aware
only
of
been a
any.
week.
Right, I'm not aware of any changes, but for instance, Bo mentioned the seeding. I haven't been out there since the 27th, so maybe the seed has sprouted, but it hadn't as of the time I was there.
Okay.
But
Do we
they made
expect
a-
it to in December?
It was warm yesterday.
Was kind of my question.
It may, you know, you never know with the weather, if it's warm enough, enough rain and get some sunshine, but possibly what Bo was mentioning, maybe the contractor seeded again, I don't know.
Okay.
When,
Okay.
when the streetlights are installed, I believe there's some kind of a fee that is paid to the town clerk for the usage of the electricity. Do you remember that, Rick?
It's my understanding that there is a deposit made with the town to the effect of something like 3 years'
Right.
worth of electricity, but I don't keep track of that.
No, but I mean, I don't think it's been discussed at this table, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, this project has been going on
I
so
understand.
long, paperwork-wise. I think it started in 2008 or something like that, and then it was resurrected in 2017. So I don't
Through no fault of
know
ours.
if the monies were deposited.
I can, if I may, I can speak to that. I have an email here from 2018 between the town planner for Tiverton at the time to my client as well as my partner, Eric Brainsky, regarding the funds to go into escrow for the lighting. Once it's installed, $3,200 was requested. There's a breakdown here for the 6 lights for the usage, and the time period is broken down, as well as a copy of my client's check. So
See
I
that-
believe I've given it to Solicitor Romano, but if not,
Give to Ed,
or
please.
to Ed, but I have this here, so I got a copy of this with me.
Is the $3,200 in the escrow account in ours, or, because I remember Nancy Mello used to take a lot of this.
So is it presently there?
Yeah.
I have no idea, but
Okay, we'll have to.
if it's been spent, it's been
No, it shouldn't be spent,
allocated to this project, but I can't imagine it has.
because normally, it was, deposited with Nancy Mello, who took care of the paying bills.
Okay.
That's the way he's got the check, I'm glad.
Okay.
I can't speak, obviously, to what the town has done with it, but I do have evidence of that discussion and the breakdown with a copy of the check.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, have we, I think we have finalized this agenda item, and should we keep this on the agenda going forward? You recommend that we do, okay, we'll.
I do.
We will do that then.
We're not done yet.
And again, it's progress report.
Yeah.
It's a progress report. Okay.
Eventually releasing the surety once they
Right.
square away everything.
Right,
Getting it
okay, so we'll put it on our
Everything.
agenda. Thank you, but Rick, you have to stay up here.
Thank you. And Stu, I do have a request, because again, I keep those document punch list items on there, because as far as I know, they haven't been received. But if the planning board or Ashley or Ed could let me know, for instance, if the as-built survey was received and accepted, if the letter from North Tiverton, et cetera, then when I redo my punch list, I'll just cross them off. So thank you for that.
Ed, you can do that? Thank you.
If I may ask, are we going to be on the January 9th meeting agenda? Are we going to be on the agenda next time, or for February, or just until it's
Hasn't been
resolved?
decided yet. That was
Okay.
my next question to them.
Excellent.
All right.
When would you like to have them come back?
Well, I think, Ashley, how does January look? Is it going to be busy? I don't think that.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't know of anything
Although January
I-
2nd, we could be overwhelmed with applications that don't come before you and only come before me. I don't, right now, we don't have anything, right, pending?
So we could probably accommodate you. Our meeting is a little later. Did you mention, Mike, that it's the 9th of January?
I believe it's January 9th. I'm not sure with the holiday.
Yeah, because we delayed it a week.
How much?
I have it in my packet someplace. I have it in my packet. I just couldn't find it earlier today.
Just based on the timeline, I don't think the streetlights, based on the timeline, are going to have
gonna
been
be-
installed by then.
Yep.
With the holiday, we might not make all that much progress. It might make more sense to push it out to February. So that would be my request.
I agree with that. If we could just decide to do this February 6th, that would give, because the streetlight timetable could go out and out a bit.
And if I may ask one last question, just because the road has been completed, which the lot owners are very thankful for, but I understand that the town still does not have the responsibility to plow because the road hasn't
Been accepted.
So that would be.
Something that, we'll discuss, and I'll discuss with my client.
Want to make.
And we can get an update on that. So we're now talking about, was it the 6th of February?
Yes. February 6th.
February 6th will be, we'll put it on the agenda, February 6th, not January. So that gives you more time. February 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Please keep providing us the updates. Okay.
Yep.
So I don't know who put the next agenda item on the agenda, but I know Rick will want to kind of lead the discussion, and this is homeowner association responsibilities to maintain streetlights and related costs. So, Rick, you were telling me in a private conversation that this could be brutally expensive for the town.
Yes, but I also don't want to step on any toes, so I'm happy for whoever put the agenda item on to go first.
No, I think it was a collaboration, so go ahead.
Okay. So DPW is not a fan of decorative streetlights. They're fed by underground electrical cables. The cost is far, far higher than the regular utility pole lights. God forbid somebody hits a utility pole and knocks down the arm and the lamp and the bulb. It might cost maybe $400 or so to put it back. A mast arm, maybe with or without the arm, is anywhere from $1,000 and up. Might be $1,400, $1,800 for the mast. That's not a installation, that's just to replace the mast with a decorative light. The town only receives X amount of money from the town itself to pay Prism. Prism does the decorative lights, Prism does the utility pole lights. To diagnose an electrical issue on a decorative light, not to repair it, to diagnose the issue, if it's not a bulb, is $1,400. That's more than maybe 3 times what it costs to replace the standard utility pole light arm. You might have, well, let me point, I wrote some notes. The most recent headlamp on a decorative light, not the mast, the headlamp and the bulb, to replace that, because it was hit by a branch or limb of a tree, was $950. That's the head and the bulb. If you have underground work that needs to be done, the work can be in excess of $20,000. You own from the fuse to the lamp. The fuse may be near the lamp, it may not. The town has multiple decorative lights that are not repaired because a few years ago, the town stopped doing it because of lack of funds. So there's many decorative lights that are not working and are not being repaired or replaced. There is no funds to do it. Also, it seems to be a disconnect between what's required for people to install or request lights to be installed on their street. Town council approval is needed for that. So there's definitely a disconnect in DPW's mind that the planning board requests or requires lights, and especially decorative lights, which by definition are underground fed. Also, I think my last note here is upwards of, I forget the exact number, but it might be about 100 lights that have been turned off, I don't know how long, 10 years? Maybe more than that, because of the cost of electricity. So again, there's a big disconnect between various standard utility pole lights that have been turned off for many, many, many years because of the cost of electricity, and the planning board requesting or requiring streetlights. And basically, as I said, with very, very infrequent exceptions, the town has not repaired decorative lights in multiple years.
So Rick, you're asking the planning board to be very considerate and deliberate if it does require any lights, and if so, that it requires the homeowners association to maintain those going forward, even though that could be treacherous in itself.
Yeah.
To require or enforce.
I think there needs to be some kind of ruling, policy, interpretation if the planning board, I'm not finding fault with the planning board or anybody on the planning board or any policy, but to me, there seems to be a lack of clarity between the planning board having the authority to require or request lights, and everybody else has to get town council approval. So I think that should be clarified. And if lights are installed in a development, and it's because it's been clear that it is okay for the planning board to do it, then if it's not gonna be an HOA-supported light, I'm not sure DPW would be in favor of it, even if it was on a utility pole. But definitely, DPW does not want decorative lights because there's no funds to maintain or repair or replace them.
So for you, you could make a condition of your final approval, it seems, town council approval of lights, if you're going to require lights in subdivisions.
And also, I'm not sure why, if the subdivision developer likes lights, do like you do with some of the ponds, some of the retention infiltration areas, you put them on private property, and that homeowner is responsible, or if it's going to be like stormwater mitigation, then the HOA is responsible.
And also keep in mind that when we do approve new subdivisions, we almost always require the utilities to be underground, so there aren't any telephone poles to put Cobra headlights on. But, you know, I went around my neighborhood at night, I'll do it again tonight. We don't have any streetlights in my neighborhood. Summerfield, Craig, Last Street, all dark. And there's no streetlights at the bottom of Randolph either, only at the top half of Randolph. And they're the ugly telephone pole Cobra headlights that we don't miss them. We don't need them. So I think we should be very cautious about pushing people into having lighting. And secondly, if they do want lighting, they have to take the responsibility of maintaining them, paying for them and maintaining them. And Rick has said that the best way to do that is to put them on private property.
And we did, if I may, when we had the LED conversion, and we had a few extra, we sent a bunch of notices out to people. This might have been 5 years ago. And at least one response was, yeah, I would like a street light, but don't put it in front of my house. We also have people call us and say we want a shade, put on a regular utility pole light. They may not even make it for that variety. So there is a certain, and I understand it, a certain feeling amongst some of the population that they don't want more light pollution. And that's been I've heard about that maybe 30 years ago. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. We will definitely keep that in mind going forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The other thing is, there's an entire section, and this came from the Conservation Commission a few years ago, regarding streetlights and requiring them, for example, to be full cutoff lights and no glare and light trespass and all that other kind of stuff, which is great, right? Because that minimizes light pollution. But lots of the decorative lights don't meet that standard. And technically, by ordinance, they're not legal on town roads anymore because they don't meet the standard of the full glare cutoff anymore. So I'm not even sure that unless that they were on private property and they were privately owned and privately maintained, they're even legal.
Good point.
And don't forget on the new developments that we've had. We've had the approval usually of the DPW director and the police chief for safety. And the developers haven't brought that many in. And underground is recommended in the comprehensive plan too. But my attendance at town council meetings and having people come in and request streetlights, it's usually at the end of a street or something like that, or a problem. But I can sympathize with Rick, and I remember when they turned off a lot of the streetlights too because of the cost of electricity. Forgot what town administrator did it.
Isn't that part of a town accepted a road?
No.
No.
Doesn't
No,
a
that's
road
not-
come with lights?
No.
No.
I mean, the problem is, all the kids wear black.
Yeah.
They never use crosswalks, number one. Quaker Hill is horrible over in Portsmouth. You come down that thing at night, and I've had a number of times with kids crossing one thing or another. And, very seldom can you see them. But to me, I mean, everything from crosswalks to signage to lighting, whether you put lighting in or not, I think is a consideration of just about any street that the town is going to accept.
And I would just be, I know, I didn't want to cut off Dick, but to respond to Rosemary, the last one that I remember that went before the town council said, and I think you were on there, Trish, they said no, and they asked DPW to put up 2 signs, I think it was, instead, so.
So, thank you, Rick. So we'll keep all of that in mind going forward. And that brings us to agenda item 4D, 4C, which is, we are.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, Dick, you can, I don't think we need you for any of these other items, unless you want to stay.
No, I always enjoy it, but thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Rick, so that brings us to 4C, which is amendments to zoning, Article 4, and Article 16, discussion of specific and objective criteria or requirements for uses that require a special use permit. I think we agreed to keep this on the agenda going forward, just so that we would not forget that we have 6 months roughly, 7 months roughly, to put all of that together. And I think that we would like to start with the more easy definitions of specific and objective criteria to put into the special use permits, and then feed that to town council in several stages, not all at one time, but give them the first. There are probably roughly 100 that we'll end up doing that are going to require, or almost 100 special use permits that will require specific and objective criteria. So, Ashley, did I get that right? There's nothing that we are doing tonight. We're just keeping this on the agenda to remind everybody. And we may have to have some special workshops in the new year, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And we'll be looking at that. So, thank you.
I just want to offer and again, not to discuss this tonight, but something to start to think about, because the more time that I spend on attempting to meet the requirement, the more I'm coming to the conclusion that it's not the right approach. I've had varying opinions from solicitors, and I'm not going to put Todd on the spot, but I think it's something we need to start thinking about, that when you have specific and objective criteria and something says that you have to have a 25-foot landscaped buffer for a specific special use permit, what if the site can't accommodate a 25-foot buffer, but that's okay? I've had one solicitor or two, however, I've had a group of solicitors say, you can't waive specific and objective criteria. You can't get a dimensional variance from specific and objective criteria. They're specific and objective criteria, and they are check boxes, and you either check the box or you don't check the box. If you don't check the box, you can't have the special use permit. Then I've had other solicitors say, well, yeah, it's a dimensional standard. You can get a waiver from that. If the board wants to say it's a 10-foot buffer because a 10-foot buffer works, then that's fine. If you can't waive specific and objective criteria, what are you supposed to do in a circumstance where they can't meet the specific and objective criteria, but that might be okay? A 10-foot buffer might be okay. Are we then going to say, I'm sorry, you can't have your special use permit because you don't have 25 feet and you can't achieve 25 feet, so therefore you can't have a special use permit? The whole design of this is rigid, and it doesn't work. I'd like to see us consider moving uses over to permitted uses that have performance standards. Performance standards can be flexed. The board can waive a performance standard under certain circumstances, and as many as we can, eliminate the necessity for a special use permit and create the performance standards for those uses. And then it becomes a negotiated discussion of, here are the performance standards, here's the performance standards I can meet, here are the performance standards I can't meet, here's how I've mitigated not being able to meet them. If that satisfies the board, then that satisfies the board. The more that I go through this exercise in 10 communities of trying to figure out how to meet this requirement, the more I'm coming to the conclusion that it doesn't work. So we don't have to discuss that tonight, something to think about moving forward, that maybe we don't put all of our effort into coming up with the specific and objective criteria for special use permits, but instead clean through the use table, move over the uses to permitted uses that we can, and come up with performance standards for them.
Right. And Ashley has mentioned that to us before, and Ashley did a very good job at the town council meeting on November 30th of explaining that to town council, the performance standards approach. And I saw a lot of town councilors nodding their heads. So I think they understood it, and I think they think it's a good approach. So that gives us something to think about. We'll just keep this item on the agenda, Ed, going forward, because it's something that we have to continue to.
first, Mr. Gerlach had something, Stu.
I was just going to say, it sounds like January is a light, like, I'm a planner, like, not a planner, but I'd like to plan things out and just have it a plan of attack. Like, so if we're going to need some runway on this, and I forget exactly when the deadline is in '24, if we do have a lighter agenda in January, perhaps that's an appropriate time to sort of dive into, let's make the plan of attack so that we can begin to execute on that.
Yeah, you have a sunset provision for July, June 30th, which is gonna come way faster than any of us
Absolutely.
are thinking about right now.
Stu,
Considering the fact that there's like 100+ uses in there that we have to determine what to do with.
I was going to ask if we could have the board start considering for January uses that can be just moved to permitted, but also we need to start identifying uses that we need to have marked as prohibited.
Agreed. You need to look at through that use table, and not just through that use table, but also thinking outside of the use table as well, because the provision that used to say if it's not listed, it's prohibited, is not true anymore.
Right.
And if there is truly something that you do not want to see, it needs to go on that prohibited uses list.
I think that's an easy starting point for us.
I've actually started a list of additional uses that we should have a definition for, because in some zones, they may be uses that we may want to list as prohibited, and then we'll need a definition. So that this is part of the work that the zoning revision committee is doing now, and I've actually started a list, Ashley. So maybe we can get you, maybe between the staff and your chairman, we can get you something by way of a memo in advance of a meeting so that you'll have something to look at and think about. So, okay, that's another task I might think about doing.
we could start voting on prohibited lists
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
at the January meeting.
yeah. I've got about 15. Every time I think of one, I just add it to my list.
Like, I'm talking
Just to
about-
get a jump, like,
I'm talking about things that are not in the district use table already,
Yeah, these are
That we need to
new, because if we.
prohibit.
Exactly.
okay?
Right.
Like nuclear power plants. I don't know if that's specifically identified, but let's list it, if it's not.
So that brings us to agenda item 4D, and this is something that town council actually approved on November 30th. This has to do with voting, the new voting requirements for, let's see,
Zoning board in
for planning and zoning, I believe.
Correct.
And I thought we're too late to get this on the agenda, but it was already on the agenda, so we're fine. And all we have to do tonight is approve this. Now, town council already has, but their approval is conditional upon our approval, because theoretically, any change to zoning comes to the planning board first, and then it goes to town council. So we're doing it a little backwards, but, so I would, just to move the situation forward, we have no choice here. The state is telling us what a quorum is and how many people are needed to pass a motion. So I'm just going to say,
This is overcome by events,
What?
isn't it?
What?
This sheet that we have here is overcome by events as far as, because the council voted on it the other night.
What do you mean it's been overcome by events?
They made it subject to your recommendation.
so
Yes.
we need to take action tonight, and consistent with what town council has already done, consistent what the state is imposing on us, not asking, but imposing on us. Actually, I think it's probably good. This is one of the few good recommendations, actually, I think. But, so I would say, I would make a motion to approve agenda item 4D as described in the agenda. Or should I go through the articles and sections?
No, you're fine. 4D
So,
as listed.
4D as listed, I would make that. So, this is pro forma, purely pro forma. You understand? Okay. And we have a second from Tricia. Do we have any discussion? We have no discussion. Those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. We're just doing what we were told to do and have no choice about. That brings us to 4E, the 5-year comprehensive plan update to statewide planning, and Ashley gave us a little bit of background information. Statewide planning, state law says that we need to make a report within 5 years of adopting a comprehensive plan to show what portions of that plan have been approved and how much progress we're making on bringing our zoning and subdivision regulations into conformity with our comprehensive plan. We approved a comprehensive plan in 2018, so we're already late. We're already in arrears, and Ashley has been reminded of that in a very nice way by statewide planning. Ashley, this is your agenda item, so you can tell us what you'd like to do or what you'd like us to do, or
So really, you can do this in any format you want. I've been provided with 2 examples and a template when I reached out to the state to ask,
And
what the requirements
I
are.
have the template, I'm not sure that you do. Ed, did you distribute that?
It's-
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
s-
that's fine.
It's a
I
simple-
didn't think anybody needed that.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple form. It just, you have to identify your community, when the plan was approved, who's providing the responses, and then it gives you space to just, in a narrative form, summarize the implementation accomplishments. So this is not just about, bringing zoning into conformance, but this is looking at your action items for the specific chapters and saying, in general, we've accomplished the following, as it relates to the action items identified in the plan. And you have to go through and do that for each chapter. So I think the easiest way to do this is to probably, for Stu, you and I to work together, get this drafted, have the board take a look at it, and then submit it once they've
Right.
approved it.
And we have made some progress. Several years ago, we did bring our zoning into compliance with the future land use map in the comprehensive plan by rezoning about 10 open space parcels from residential, R80 primarily, to open space, to the designation OS. So we have made a little bit of progress, and I'd be happy to work with Ashley. Maybe we could get Ed involved in this as well, if you'd like, if you'd be interested, Ed. And 3 heads are better than 2, and to come up with a list of things that, and in fact, all of those items are listed already in the comp plan, all of the things with assigned to different boards and commissions, mostly to the planning board, but, so, okay, thank you. So maybe we should keep this on the agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to fill out the form
Let's-
and then bring back a draft to the planning board, have them,
Yeah, okay.
bless it and submit it.
Okay, good. Sue,
I know that our board.
Sue, if you could come up and speak. Sue Anderson, Chair of the Historic Preservation Advisory.
Board, yeah,
Board.
so I've been working with our action items, and I have, as Stu knows, because he's a member, we have completed some of them, but, so I can give you our input for those, so.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, yeah, we can contact some other people. I'm sure the Conservation Commission has a list. They have a fair number of responsibilities. Economic Development, Renee Jones would probably have a list, so we can reach it. Yeah. So that brings us to agenda item 4F, which is the solar ordinance use table changes. The town council did approve on November 30th special use permits in the a temporary suspension of special use permits in the solar ordinance. So I think that's taken care of, but I'll ask Tricia, because Tricia,
I
I think that, for some reason, I thought that agenda item was supposed to be that we need to do something about the checklist for solar applications. And I think there's a draft that got handed in a while ago, but the planning board's never adopted it. And there are some things that are unique to a solar application that aren't in our regular checklist.
I don't think I ever saw that.
No.
Was it ever distributed?
It went to you and Ashley.
It went to me?
Yeah, and Ashley.
Did you send it?
Yeah, a couple months ago.
And
Well, I think I still have it on my computer.
I think I still have it somewhere, but at some point, the planning board has to actually look at it and either amend it or adopt it, because there are things that you need of a solar applicant that aren't on our regular checklist.
We will put it on the January agenda then.
Okay.
I'll dig it out. I still have your email, but I didn't know I was supposed to do anything with it.
That's okay.
And solar bores me anyhow.
Well, I think.
Now, if it had been design standards, I would have read it.
I think the application that we have before us is a good example of why a checklist is necessary, because we don't want the applicant to just focus on the land development checklist when there are things in the ordinance itself that are required that are seemingly getting missed. So I do think that, I would second that a checklist is helpful.
Okay, I will dig that out and make sure, and remind me if I forget, that we're gonna put solar on the agenda for the checklist, with the checklist distributed to the board as backup material in advance of our meeting. Okay, so that brings us to agenda item 4G. Recommend to town council on renewal of license. Okay, this is a good one. We now have letters from John Hoyle on both G and H. G is the license for Country View Estates, and H is a memo concerning Helger Brothers Sand and Gravel Quarry. It used to be the Coelho Quarry, but now the Helger Brothers have it. And it would have come to us in November, and then we would have passed it on to town council. But town council had to act, and they acted in November, and they approved the license subject to the planning board making a positive recommendation. So again, this is something that's kind of, reversed the way it should be, but town council has already approved both of these licenses, subject to our positive recommendation. And we do have a letter now from John Hoyle on both of those licenses, saying that he has no problem with that. We do have those letters, don't we? Ed, you got those letters out a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah, I got the Elder Brothers out this evening, and I passed out the Country View.
The Country Review went out earlier, I think, a couple of days ago. So in both cases, there are no problems. And again, all we're asking, this is pro forma, all we're asking to do is approve something that has already been approved, more or less. Pardon?
It's 2030, not 2023. That's supposed to be 2030, is that?
No, 2023, I think.
It says the year, November 16th,
For,
2030.
on the Helger Brothers letter,
Yeah.
it's, Mr. Hoyle indicates his site visit date as November 16th, 2030.
The address is also wrong.
So he's a time traveler.
I was just gonna say, you
Yeah,
must be
it's-
time traveling.
And he says 1164, and it's 1764.
So we actually have Mr. Helger here with us. And Bill Smith, our civil engineer, our friendly civil engineer who appears before us all the time and does excellent work. So I guess all we need to do is make a positive recommendation to town council. I'll sign it. It'll be like a one-sentence memo saying that we make a positive, based on John Hoyle's recommendation, we make a positive recommendation for a license extension for both the Helger Brothers, formerly known as Coelho Quarry, and Country View Estates.
I was just
Bill?
going to suggest that the motion for Helger, I say Helger, it's not Helger.
Either way.
Yeah, I grew up saying Helger, but anyway, is conditioned on Mr. Hoyle updating this letter, because it's wrong. It's the wrong address and it's the wrong date, so I don't want to.
Normally, it's the town planner that does this inspection, because we put these into the ordinances because of we wanted some oversight on the building official's office for past problems. that
Okay, can we have a motion that would be conditional upon an updated memo, which has the right date and the right address from John Hoyle? Would that satisfy you, Bill, or do you want us to bring it back? Because I think, since the license has already been granted, I hate to keep the, I hate to keep both of the licensees in suspension for another month. I'd rather.
That expires the end of this month.
So we need to do something anyhow.
So I'll amend my motion to include that Mr. Hoyle correct the typographical errors in his memo.
Okay, and I'm coming in tomorrow, and I'll, rather than force you to do that, Ed, because it's uncomfortable, I'll go in and talk to John.
Who was the original second?
There was no second. I'll
Okay.
second it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, a motion by Tricia, a second by Bill. Do we have any further discussion?
There is. I just want to know do you have an updated plan there, Mr. Smith? Okay.
No, I just was here just in case the board had questions or there were any issues.
Anything you want to submit to the board? Okay.
Okay. No further discussion, hearing no further discussion, all of those in favor? Okay. We will have to work on I can do that with you tomorrow, Ed. But we can put something together and I'll sign it right then and there and we'll give it to Joan Shabbat for distribution. Good. Congratulations.
Thank you. Have a nice holiday, everyone.
Are you actually working the quarry?
Start to, yes.
Because it hasn't been worked in years. Good, I hope you find gold.
Go
You and me both.
Go sell those
Or
Christmas
lithium.
trees.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that brings us to, we've done G and H, that brings us to I, which is planning board budget, and this is gonna be really quick. You do have some backup on this. It's what we did last year, and I actually talked to both the town treasurer, Denise Surratt, and to Joan Shabbat. I talked to Joan because she is the one who actually sends out the letters that go to abutters, and that's a very costly process. Denise Surratt had no issues. It felt like, since we haven't used any of our budget this year, we used $4,000 in a year ago, but we haven't expended a single penny this fiscal year. So in the fiscal year that begins, I believe, June 1 of 2024, I was going to suggest the same budget, but when I talked to Joan, she said, why don't you keep the gross amount, the total gross amount, which is $13,000, $10,000 for legal and professional, and $3,000 for advertising for changes to subdivision regulations. Why don't you take $3,000 out of the legal and professional services $10,000 budget, dropping that back to $7,000, and take that $3,000 and add it to the $3,000 budget for notification, a butter notification for subdivision regulations. So she thought that that would adequately cover that cost, because we are in the process of revising subdivision regulations, and that will go to public hearing. And I think it'll probably end up going into the new fiscal year, the next fiscal year. So Ashley, if that's good with you, so we're not actually expanding our budget, we're just modifying our budget a little bit. And what I will do tomorrow, probably, if you all agree with this, is put a letter together to town council and saying that what we request, and using the line items that you can see on the letter I sent last year.
$7,000 for professional?
So we would have $7,000 for legal and professional, and we can get more.
We need money for professional services.
Yeah. I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here. I don't think we should move money out of professional services at
I
all.
agree.
As a matter of fact, I even think we should ask for a little more, but, here's the thing. If we run over on the advertising, then one of two things happens. Either the council covers it out of contingency.
Right.
Which, because if we're doing this, in theory, they're approving it. So it either has to will get covered out of contingency.
Right.
Or if we're really not using the professional services money, they'll transfer it. They have the ability to do that. But I think with all the stuff that we have going on, and potentially, sort of what we have coming, plus, I think with these new regulations, which are not really tested, right? And they haven't been tested in court. There are gonna be things that we may need some outside help on, simply because, we're all in a brave new world here of zoning based on what the General Assembly's done. So I would actually ask for a little bit.
Okay, so would you like to recommend keeping the 10,000 for legal and professional, or maybe even asking for like 15?
I would
Ask for 15 for legal and professional,
It's
and
not-
6 for, and 6,000 for a butter notification.
Well, but here's the thing. I mean, there's actually a lot less notification, right, going forward?
The only cost will be first-class mail and newspaper advertisements.
Right. So
No
there's
more certified.
There's no more certified letters. So
After January 1, though, and that will affect the new.
That's now.
Oh, it's now,
It's
okay.
now.
That happened in June.
Okay,
I
so,
think that we could leave the $3,000 for notification, because if we go over on that, it's for a
Okay.
reason. We can always go back to the council and they can.
right, and
Everybody else gets money out of
Denise,
contingency fund,
and
why
Denise,
not us?
and Denise Surratt reminded me that the town council does actually have a line item. It's not even a contingency, it's a line item for,
Advertising.
for
Yeah,
advertising.
the clerk has it. It's-
And she said, it's so ample that you can, don't worry about it. She said, don't worry about it.
It's actually in the clerk's budget, which is, this was smart of Joan. She's trying to get you to, that'll leave a little more in her.
Okay,
in her
so,
budget.
so I'm gonna amend my recommendation that we go 15,000 for legal and professional services, giving us 5,000 more than we have now. And we'll just keep the advertising budget at $3,000.
I mean, the council may say no, but you're not gonna get any consideration unless you
Yeah,
ask.
I think the town council is gonna say no on the 15. I really, having talked to Denise, the other Denise DeMaderis today, they're not in a big spending frame of mind. So, okay, good. So I would make that motion. So the two line items will now be 15,000 and 3,000. And I will put that in a letter, but I need a motion for you to approve our budget for the new fiscal year beginning June 1st,
Our requested-
2024.
Our requested budget?
Is it
I'll make
June
a-
1st, or did they change it to October?
No, it's June. It's June 1st. It's weird.
I'll make a motion to approve our requested budget of $15,000 for professional and legal services and $3,000 for advertising.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Okay, I'll get that letter out. Do you want to see the letter? Or do you trust me?
I don't need to see the letter, but I do think it would be worth putting some extra narrative in the letter to support why we're asking for the 15 and not the 10 for professional and legal services.
We've got the time to put this on our January agenda, so why don't I give you a letter, a draft letter?
Sure.
And that way you can vote on the actual letter. And it will have verbiage in it to justify why we're increasing. I'd be happy to do that. That's a good suggestion, Bill. So I don't need a motion now. We'll do the motion in January. Okay? So this item will be continued to January, where we will have a vote. And now, that brings us to J, 4J, Technical Review Committee Policies and Procedures. Do we have, we definitely want to create a standing TRC. We had a long discussion about it recently at one of our recent meetings, and we made some changes to what Ashley had provided us. Specifically, we don't want 3 members of the general public, but we do want, and we want Ashley to have as much discretion as she needs as the AO chairs the TRC, to call meetings or not to call meetings. And it's a lot easier for her if we have a standing committee and all of the various technical experts know that they serve on that committee. Would you like to take action now, Ashley, or can we defer this to January? Since when we put the agenda together, I envisioned that we would be making quicker progress.
I know. I realize the late nature of this, and we've got new members that haven't even been part of the discussion previously, and so I want to be, sensitive to both of those, but I don't want to delay it further than we have to, because we know as of January, we're going to start receiving applications that need
TRCs.
that TRC review, and I would hate to find us in a situation where we get an application, that's submitted that we would be bringing to that TRC, sometime in between your meetings, and we don't have the committee, and I don't want to leave that to chance if at all possible. Maybe the safer position is to adopt this as is with the idea that we'll put it back on the January agenda and we can make amendments and discuss it further. You can amend it again, but at least we have something in place. Should we end up with an application that needs to go to TRC in that awkward period between your meetings where you won't be able to designate one.
Right. And I think that the decisions that we did make at the last meeting, that were basically had to do with the membership. And we gave Ashley the discretion to bring in additional experts depending on the project, because every project is different, and sometimes you need Sue Anderson to talk to the historic aspect of the project, or you might need Tom Ramatowski to talk about a complicated conservation or environmental issue. So we did that. We got rid of the line where there were 3 public members. And I think we agreed to 3 members of the planning board, so that we would have plenty of planning board representation. So if you're happy with that membership list, the other thing we did is we insisted on minutes. And that was something that was brought up by Jay Edwards. Jay has a leg problem. We talked earlier today, and he thinks it was actually a tick bite, but he's limping around, and he said he wouldn't be able to be here tonight. I hope he gets better. But he wanted to make sure that we advertise, not advertised, but we post the meetings as we would one of our own meetings, and that we do formal minutes in a timely fashion, and I think it was like within 10 days, Ashley, of the meeting, minutes would be provided, and that they would be posted on the Secretary of State's website. Even though we don't need to do that, Jay thought we should, in the interest of public disclosure and transparency, and I completely agree, because I have seen TRCs that were not at all transparent, even to the planning board. Although I feel much more comfortable with Ashley running the TRCs. And so if everybody can agree to that, and I feel very strongly about the transparency part of it, and about getting a membership that knows the issues, then we can proceed with adopting that.
All those things are in there.
And then take a good hard look at what Ashley provided us earlier to see if there's anything else that you would like to do. And we will put it on the agenda for January, but in the meantime, we will have a legally established TRC. We do have to draft, Ashley, we do have to draft policies and procedures.
That's what this document is.
So that document is the policies and procedures.
So
Okay.
the last version you had, we have a few updates to make to that based on the notes, but I've just taken out that 3 members of the public. So the membership consists of the administrative officer, the zoning official, fire marshal, DPW, police chief, member of the Conservation Commission, and up to 3 members of the planning board.
Fisher also recommended the town engineer.
Oh,
The
that's
engineer to
right.
the planning board.
Right.
Yes, the consulting town engineer, I think his official title is consulting engineer. Town consulting engineer. And Rick is on there too, as DPW, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Rick on there,
Public
good.
Works or his
Yep.
designee.
Are
So
we
that's
saying
good.
that as a that's just consulting planning board engineer, not, or designee, right? We don't want him sending someone else.
Yeah, we only have that for the.
Well, I mean,
department.
unless he's on, you know, I mean, it could be.
Right.
Or it could be something like, maybe there's a specific kind of project and there's somebody who's, I don't know, not.
Well, Ashley can invite other people.
Yeah.
As
I-
it's-
it
that
can.
provision is already in there.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Good
So
point.
that would be the list of people who would serve.
Yep.
And then it's already in there that there's gonna be,
Additional members, administrative officers shall have ability to invite additional members.
so that's in there.
Yeah.
And then the planning board, the mechanism by which you guys decide who sits is in there, but those are the types of things I would say we can amend later on, we can continue to discuss. As long as we have who constitutes the TRC at this point, the fact that we're gonna post an agenda, and that, let's see.
Subsection B about agenda, subsection C about
Meeting record.
Being the notes, shall be available for public review, copy sent to the planning board.
I mean, we can just post the notes as a courtesy. I don't know that you need to have it in here as a requirement, right?
I don't think you should have it here as a requirement to post on the Secretary of State's.
Right.
Because then if you don't, you've
You're
violated this.
you're violated the procedures. We'll do it. There's no reason not to, but I don't think it needs to be in here. as a requirement.
For the meeting notes, the
Right.
agenda shall be posted.
The agenda has to, we've been doing that anyway, the agendas have always been posted.
You know, I'm going to be a little contrary on this one. There were times when a former planner had TRC meetings and didn't even inform the chair of the planning board about the meeting. I found out about it later.
Well, these will be standing meetings, so
And
you'll
there
all
were-
know
And there
that
were
they're
times,
happening.
and there were many times when no minutes, no notes, no summary of the TRC was ever produced.
So this does require that there's an
Now,
official
we have-
meeting notes.
We have better staff now, so that's not gonna happen. But what happens if you leave, Ashley, and we get, you know,
Well, there
Debbie
is-
Dunderhead?
But they're still not going to be posted to the Secretary of State's site.
There's a requirement in here that
enforcement.
there's meeting notes, that they have to be provided, that they're given to the planning board.
Okay.
So that is in here. I think the formality of like posting to the Secretary of State, we will make that a
You could
practice,
write
Ed
in
and I
here,
will
post,
take care of
but that doesn't
that.
mean it's going to be done by Debbie Dunderhead,
Well, that's very true.
right?
That's very true.
So,
That's very true.
Who
And
is
she-
this Debbie and when is she taking over?
Her other name is Jennifer.
So,
All right, let's not go there.
I know.
It's getting late,
I'm
so
I'm a little with Stu on this, honestly, because keeping in mind how much now authority the TRC has, right, for approving things.
Well, they don't. They have no authority for
Okay.
approving.
Well,
They're advisory
Not-
They're
only.
advisory, but however, they're advisory to the permitting authority, which
Yes.
in many cases will not be the planning board anymore, right?
True.
So that's a lot more authority now really for the thing. I think, and I say this having been involved with the town in 2 lawsuits where there were decisions that were made at a TRC meeting that were not memorialized in a way that was legally binding, and then we ended up in court. So I really think that those minutes should be posted, because then they are legal minutes, right? If they're.
no, it's an advisory board.
Okay.
These are not,
They're not.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me rephrase this. The agreed upon items, or the minutes, or the interpretation of what was agreed upon is posted somewhere. They're not kind of like, okay, there are these meeting minutes, there are these notes, they went to the planning board and they're actually posted somewhere for sure. And I think that that's a useful thing. So I actually do think that it would be good to have them posted to the Secretary of State's website, like all the other minutes. Just saying.
And I know
We
Jay
don't have
feels
to
very
decide.
strongly.
I mean, I know it's getting late, but if we're gonna discuss this again in January.
Well, I was
that would
gonna
be
say,
something
can
I'd
we
like to
pass
discuss.
this as is so
Yeah.
that we have it in place and then we can have a longer
Right.
discussion
Right.
about that in January? And if the
Absolutely.
board moves in the direction of saying we want the minutes posted on the Secretary of State's website, we'll make that change. You
Right.
can readopt these as amended.
Right. I will make that, well, let me make a motion, let somebody second the motion, then we will have a discussion about the motion. So I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the policies and procedures that Ashley has submitted with the amendments that were
We
made.
discussed.
At our when we last discussed this, which was back in October, I believe. If we have a second, then we can have a discussion, and I'll go, Chris is seconding. Now, Rosemary.
What day of the week do you want it? Standing date.
that doesn't have to be in this.
I thought it did.
No, one has to be determined. But you don't have to set that policy right here in your written policies. The policy is
Okay.
a
That
date
you
shall
will
be
have
established,
Shall
a
be,
standing
okay.
date, so.
not what the date
But,
shall
I
be.
mean, I was thinking of having one tonight, if she needs it before we meet again.
She doesn't, there's nothing.
Okay.
January 9th is our next meeting.
All right, as long as it doesn't hold her up.
I have a question, and I can't remember from the meeting where we discussed this, but I know we have up to 3 planning board members, but do we want like a minimum of 1 to make sure there are at least 1 in there? I can't remember if that was in the language.
It's not. In the
It just says
language,
up
it
to
just says
3.
up to 3.
And I don't know if it matters, but going back to your point about how, somebody was having planning board meetings without you, that could still technically happen. So I don't know if we
So
wanna
what
move
if we
on to
change that language to say 1 and up to 3 members? Because it says that the committee shall be, and right now it just says up to 3 members. We could say, so the minimum would be 1, the maximum would be 3. A minimum of 1 and up to 3 members of the planning board.
Yes, excellent. So you can make that change.
Yes.
At leisure. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further?
I didn't get a second.
It was Chris.
It was
Oh, you
Chris.
did?
Yeah.
You're so quiet.
He's sleeping.
And I did recognize you as seconding, so any further discussion? Hearing none. Sorry for the time, but okay, so that brings us to approval of minutes, and we have 2 sets of minutes. I think Ed and I went through everything. Ed did a great job on the minutes. So I think I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the first set of minutes was done by Todd. And the first set of minutes was October 3rd, and that was done by Ed. The second set, October 16, was done by Todd, and that was our special meeting where we adopted all of the changes to zoning. And so both sets of minutes are in excellent shape, I think. So I will make a motion to approve October 3, 2023, regular monthly meeting minutes. Do I have a second? Then we can have a discussion and see if anybody found any typos that I
I'll second it.
overlooked. Okay, we have a second from Bill Gerlach. And now, is there any further discussion? I don't see any red marks that I made, so when I read this
Janice.
over.
I've got a.
Janice does.
I do.
Ed?
Page 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th paragraph down,
What page?
3.
3.
Mr. Landry presented the concept plan, get rid of the comma, to the board. He said that the project is a comprehensive permit application, get rid of the comma with the sewer. And then 1, 2, down from there. The planning board expressed concern also about the amount of hardscape. Planning board also expressed concern.
Yes, yes. Excellent. Thank you for spotting. All 3 of those are correct, or improvements.
I didn't find anything else.
Okay. Rosemary, anything? Okay, no one else? So I would amend my, my motion to approve with the corrections, the 3 corrections noted just now. And if Ed has that, thank you, Janice, then any further discussion? Hearing none. All of those in favor? Okay, so so those minutes are approved, and now we'll go on to the minutes for October 16th.
We can look at it.
I was here on the 16th. I did not, this was not part of the Google Drive.
Oh, that was for November, sorry. Because we didn't have a November meeting, it was submitted.
Oh, so it's okay, so I had looked at that, okay.
So
Yes,
are
there it
these
is.
meeting minutes on the Google Drive?
They're on there,
November
but they were
They're on-
for the 11/14 meeting, which we didn't have.
so they're not
I
on
see
this
them right here.
Google Drive.
Okay.
Okay, so, does anybody have any correction, before I even make a motion, any correction for October 16? Janice, you didn't find anything?
I don't know if I have them with me. I did go through them, but I've shuffled the paper around so much.
It's a good first meeting to be at.
I don't have anything.
Okay, good. Okay, so no one seems to have any issues with the minutes of October 16, so I'll make a motion to approve the October 16 minutes as presented to the planning board.
Second.
Okay, we have a second from, was that Chris or Bill? Bill. We have a second from Bill. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Good, thank you. Thank you, Todd, for doing these.
You're welcome.
So that brings us to update of subdivision regulations. Well, we haven't done anything on that yet. We have been focused entirely on zoning.
Yes.
So we will just carry that agenda item forward to our next meeting, just in case we have anything. The update on the North Tiverton Business Park Committee, I'm the representative to that committee. In one sentence, I'll tell you, it is a terrific committee. It is being very well chaired by Mike Burke. We have made a ton of progress. We are going to recommend that Ashley's firm do a revitalization plan for North Tiverton. And we've been working on an RFP, which we have $100,000 in a budget for that. And we have also pretty much agreed, subject to town council's approval, of course, to go with a state program called Rhode Island Ready that helps landfills get up to a point where they begin to attract good tenants. Not landfills, but industrial parks and business parks. So we are going with we are probably going with Rhode Island Ready, and we've actually been talking to one of their consultants who works with the Quonset Development Corporation that actually does most of the work on that. So, and I guess we're focusing pretty much on infrastructure because that's what we're lacking. And the application to be part of that program is very de minimis. And there are all kinds of benefits from that program. So if Ashley attends our meetings and has been very helpful, did I leave anything out, or is that a pretty good update?
I think that's
So,
it.
so now I'm going to have to call on Tricia to give us an update on the zoning revision committee. She sits as our representative to that. And I've been attending those meetings as well.
Well, we're slogging through. There's a lot in there. And we also have Ashley at our meetings to help, so that's a considerable help, but it's a dedicated group of people who are working pretty hard, and there's a lot to get through, but we're making progress.
And that committee has a lot of really impressive people on it as well.
But we don't have a budget for anything.
So, but no budget.
We have
North
no
Tiverton
budget.
has all the budget money.
North Tiverton has all the budget money. We have no budget money.
And that's chaired by Jay Edwards. So a town council member chairs both of those committees. So that brings us to status of zoning code revision. Okay, we've just done that. O is Tiverton Planning Board annual calendar. And Ed put this together, and I don't see any problems with it. But Janice does, and I think let's see, I can't even find it here. Can I look at yours?
Sure.
So what we have is, page 1 is the regular monthly meetings, and then page 2 are the backup meetings in case we need a second meeting. So what we need is, I have to submit this to the clerk, right?
Secretary of State has to get
To the Secretary of State and to the town clerk.
our chiefs of ministry.
So it should say approved by planning board.
Put the footer on.
And then I have to sign it and then say blank, and I sign it as chair of the planning board. Janice,
November 12th is the day after the 11th, which falls on a Monday, and it's a holiday.
but it's not a major holiday.
Veterans Day?
Veterans Day is a
Yes,
holiday.
it is. So would the council
What-
be having their meeting on the 12th?
Depends on how their bi-weekly meetings fall.
Because there's election
The Monday before, Tuesday before.
Where's November 12th? Where does it say November 12th?
November 11th is Veterans Day, which would be a council meeting.
We
If
get
it wasn't
the
a
Monday
holiday.
holiday
Oh, that you're looking
before
at the regular
would
meeting
push the
calendar.
council
Sorry,
to
I'm
the
looking.
12th, if that's a meeting for them.
In Veterans Day, in the federal law, if the holiday falls on a Saturday, it's observed on the Friday. If it falls on a Sunday, it's observed on a Monday. That's what the federal law is for Veterans Day.
But they didn't do
It
it
falls on
this
Monday
year.
anyway, so.
That's the state, but the federal law observed it on Monday.
So.
It is on a Monday.
But it is on a
though.
In 2024, it's
So-
on a Monday.
So Janice is telling us that this room will be taken by town council, because they will be having their meeting on the 12th. I think we can still meet on the 12th. You know, I don't take Veterans Day as a major holiday, but I know it's a federal holiday.
They don't work in the town of Tiverton. November.
But it's not something that, like, we're all gonna be on travel and we've got a house full of, you know, guests because it's Veterans Day or something. So let's meet on the 12th. If we push it back a week, we're getting way back in November and very close to the December meeting. And I think all hell may break loose next year.
I think we'll have to just do it at a different location, maybe the library.
We can do it at the library, we can do it at the senior center.
sign up for the
We'll,
library.
we can do it at the high school if we have
We
to.
just need to remember to book a room someplace.
We just have to book a room someplace, so let's keep that date, if that's okay with everybody.
I have,
Does anybody have,
yes, you read my notes, Stu, and
I did, I
I suggest that you use the footer that's on this year's
yeah, and
agenda.
Actually, I looked before.
Use it and just substitute the date approved in Stu's.
we can do that tomorrow, and I
add
will
that.
sign it and hand it over to the clerk, and remind the clerk that she needs to send it to Secretary of State, or she does all of that, I think.
I submitted to Secretary of State.
Okay, then,
Once it's,
okay, then we'll take, Ed and I will take care of that tomorrow.
I'm just going
So-
to point out the July 2nd meeting.
There's not really anything.
Yeah,
You can,
you know,
it's safe right now.
we don't,
Just bringing it up.
we may have a quorum problem, but I think we should. I know I'll be around.
We stayed until 2.
Sorry, but,
July 2,
yeah,
there's a meeting. You're okay with that?
okay. Admittedly, I wasn't paying attention for a second. Why is there a problem with July 2nd? I'm confused.
4th of July.
But that's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
But it's not 4th of July, and it's the Tuesday before 4th of July, so I'm not sure why I have a problem with that. I think I'm okay.
Okay.
And everybody's in town, at least they should be in town in July. Okay, so now I need a motion to approve the calendar with the amendments that were noted, with the footer in particular. So all of the dates stay the same.
So moved.
So we have a motion by Bill and a second by Dick. And so any further discussion? No further discussion? Those in favor? Okay, unanimous. Okay, and that brings us to
Moratorium, status report.
yeah, I was asked to put this on the agenda. that town council did meet November, no, I'm getting two issues confused here. Town council agreed to go out to advertise for 3 weeks for a special hearing to hear the a proposal for a 6-month moratorium, temporary 6-month moratorium on major land development, and that would include any housing development larger than 4 residential units. And so that hearing will be advertised for 3 weeks, and I guess toward the end of this month, at the very end of this month, a date will be set for the public hearing. So that's a public hearing you'll all want to come to. And the whole rationale behind this 6-month moratorium is so that we have some time to comply with the upcoming state changes, and it also recognizes the fact that we have a large number of development proposals either being reviewed by us right now or very likely to come before us in the not-too-distant future, including a lot of comprehensive permit projects.
It does not apply to comprehensive permit projects.
It does not, the moratorium does not apply to comprehensive permit projects.
Submitted January 1st or after.
Right. So that's where we are, so come to that hearing. And then, of course, the process is the hearing will be held at the town council level, and then the town council will decide, make a decision.
Is there a target for when that moratorium would ideally start?
I believe January 1.
It's a 6-month moratorium.
I think it starts on passage.
Right.
It starts on passage,
Okay.
right. It starts on passage, right. It's not tied to the state legislation coming into effect.
But just for the record, to clarify, one of the significant factors behind all of this is, in fact, the infrastructure issues. And
Specifically
and
water.
specifically how much water is available, both, both public water as well as groundwater for people who are relying on wells. So the great unknown of really what we have for infrastructure is a big component of this, to give us some time to actually figure out what we actually have and what we don't have.
In a study, and Chris Cotta has gotten a grant to fund a study of our water systems, both North Tiverton and Stone Bridge, and maybe even parts of town that depend on wells. I'm not sure how extensive the study is going to be, but that will produce some hard numbers. And earlier this evening, I referred to a section of that a moratorium, and Ed has given you all copies of it, that talks about school capacity. And we are very close to reaching full capacity in 2 of our schools, Ranger and the middle school. So that's another part of it. So we need to stop approving projects until we know that we're not going to have to build a new school, and that we can get them water. Not water just for consumption, but also water for fire suppression without causing problems elsewhere in the systems.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, did you just allude to Ed handing out that memo from the school?
No, it wasn't from the school. It was a memo, and it had draft. You did get that out, didn't you, Ed? As a backup for agenda item? You didn't?
I didn't put anything in this one.
Okay,
Regards to?
this was the memo that we cleaned up in your office.
Oh, that went to the town council, I didn't submit that. I didn't distribute it to them.
Okay,
Was that for,
I,
that was the one Chris Cotta sent over?
exactly.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Okay,
distribute that. I don't actually have a copy of it other than the one that we worked on.
okay, but you have the cleaned up copy that we both worked on.
I do.
Okay, so we can send that out to all members of the planning board. So you'll know what the 6-month moratorium is all about. It's really simple. I mean, it's only like 10 pages. Good, so, and that is the last item I have, so I'm entertaining a motion to adjourn at 10:21.
So moved.
Second.
And
Doesn't
we
need
could,
a second.
and we could even get a privileged motion if we
It's a
need one.
privileged motion, you don't have to
Okay,
second.
all those in favor? We're out of here.